All right. Good morning. Good morning. I've got my co hosts letting more people in. More people are coming in. Thanks for sharing it out. My name is Sean Murphy. Welcome to episode 730. In the house, we've got a special guest today. There's Jeffrey Miller. Love you, Jeffrey Miller. And there's Emily. There's Emily. Big smile. Oh, he mentioned my hubby's name. God bless both of you. There's Ann Poe in the UK. There's Leo in New York. The dance machine Eugenia is there. We got Costa Rica in the house. We got Vicky Hines from Vegas. There's Sharon in Cincinnati. It is so good to see you all. There's Thaddeus and there's Connie O'Neill. Good to see you. And Nadine, I love having you all here. I'm like a little kid. Can you tell it? Can you tell it? I'm excited. I'm so excited. I can't. There's Michael Vogel. Michael Vogel in the house. It's good to see. Dana Scranton's got his hat on. He's buffered in the cold. I tell him it's 10 degrees here in Dallas. He goes, boy, that'd be a heat wave where I live. Hey, listen, everybody. Today is about marketing. It's just about that. It's the transfer. Zig Ziglar said it. Sales is the transference of enthusiasm. But you know what? If you don't have a place to put that enthusiasm in marketing, you're kind of talking to a wall. You're getting people excited and they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. So what we're going to have a conversation. I got to calm down a little bit. I'm literally shaking. I'm so excited. I've got it's a blessing for me today to have this individual spend some time with me. Now, we're good friends. We're brothers. We've known each other for a while. Yet there's a certain amount of just absolute honor and recognition that I need to give to him because, you know, how many of you have that friend that other people go, you know him? You know her? That's who this individual is to me. How many of you, if you know Jim Rohn, if you've ever heard anything about Jim Rohn, drop an R in the chat. I want to see the chat blow up. Drop an R in the chat if you love Jim Rohn. Because here's the reason. Jim Rohn is a brilliant conversationalist, a brilliant mindset manager, a business philosopher. Jim Rohn was Jim Rohn. Right? Earl Schoaf did some amazing things with him. Jim Rohn turned himself into Jim Rohn. But Jim Rohn without Kyle Wilson would have had a much smaller audience. Kyle Wilson is the individual who helped to bring Jim to the market, and you're going to hear that in part of his story. The reason that if you have a Jim Rohn quote book, over 6 million of those sold is because they were marketed. If your business is stalled right now, it's because there's only two things you can do in business, marketing and innovation. And you're going to get both of those today. You're going to hear how Kyle built a 1 million person email list before the internet and how he's doing it again a little bit easier from the comfort of his own home with some tips and strategies and techniques. And then we're going to talk as we bring the first part of the conversation into a wrap. We're going to give you a chance to have a conversation and find out how you can learn more about some of these insider, never before revealed secrets. Because I've been with him for 7 years and hadn't heard some of this conversation that you're about to hear this morning. So I could keep going on and on, of course. But let me introduce you to Jim Rohn's business partner for 18 years. Probably few people have spent more time with that icon. The person who helped market him and allowed you to be able to hear his message, to capture Jim's conversations and put them into a way for you to be able to experience them. Please help me welcome to the stage with some chats and some hand waves, my dear friend, brother, Kyle Wilson. Kyle, how are you, brother?
Sean, I'm good. Thank you. Wow, that's powerful.
I'm excited. So you know what? I could ask you 1,001 questions. We get to ask you questions all the time. I'm just going to let you go with it and share your story, and I'm here for you. And listen, folks, I want you to light up the chat when he asks you to drop something in the chat and watch what happens to your business today. From today, listen, today will never, ever be the same. So I appreciate you so much.
Hey, I appreciate you, Sean. And good morning, everyone. And yeah, Sean and I met, I'm going to say 2012. And when I started my inner circle, he was one of the founding members. And, you know, the first time I saw Sean at this event, he got up, he spoke, he wowed me. He, you know, with his competency, with just how he owned the stage when he got up to speak, and then he'd go back and be humble. And I've always been impressed with Sean in many ways. Hearing Sean's introduction kind of reminds me of Tony Robbins was introducing Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn would get up and just, really bring the energy back down. And that is a little bit of our personalities. And so I'm really excited about today. Sean, I do have to say the million plus list was after the internet. So
Okay.
I built that. I saw the internet early, 1999, and I started Messages from the Masters, Quotes from the Masters, then the Jim Rohn e-zine, then the Slide Edge newsletter. And so, and the other thing I'll say is when Sean talks about the quote book of Jim's, it was the creation of it. I did that with Jim not even knowing. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, because here's the thing. I created that without him even knowing, because there wasn't any Jim Rohn quotes per se. They were in his talks, but he didn't have a list. And so we're going to talk today, because that's such a great point. Nothing changed about Jim Rohn's message. The only thing that changed was the strategic marketing of it. And I talk about two key things. And everything I do is about these two key things: strategy and principles. And I had the good fortune to also work with Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, Les Brown, Mark Victor Hansen. I created 300 intellectual properties, and over half were not Jim's. They were Dennis Waitley's. And it all got down to some of these things we're going to really dive into. And so I'm excited, and I think we're going to also have time for Q&A. And so I hope I can tee you up with some questions that you're going to have for me. And here's the thing, when it comes to questions, I like things that are real time, like not theoretical. So what would it take to be a great speaker? No, come on, let's get in the trenches. Where are you at today? What's your situation? Because really, there aren't any cookie cutters. I'm not a cookie cutter guy. And so with Jim Rohn, the strategy I had with Jim was totally different when I was working with Mark Victor Hansen. And I'll talk about Mark changed my life. I was working with him in 94, 95. Brian Tracy and I partnered on multiple products. What I did with Brian was totally different than Jim, because they were totally different. And so we're going to touch base on that this morning. Is marketing without evaluation of your goals, your purpose, your strengths, your weaknesses, your secret sauce, your avatar, all those things really is missing the very thing that would matter most. If there wasn't the Jim Rohn quote book, millions of people wouldn't have heard Jim. But that was a very intentional thing. That took a lot of thought to come up with even the idea and the strategic knocking down the dominoes. So I'm excited, Sean, because we're going to dive into that type of strategic thinking. Let me tell you my story real quick. And can you hear me okay, Sean? Is the mic where it should be?
You sound great, Kyle. You sound awesome. Thanks, man.
Awesome. I was having technical difficulties, so I'm glad that I might be lit up a little more.
You mean it happens to you too?
Yeah, more for me than for you, for sure. I'm a novice at all this, but I'm not sure if I'm too lit up, but I'm just happy it's working at the moment. So my story is I grew up in a small town. I never went to college. People said, wow, how'd you get to partner with Jim Rohn? You must have been an E student, high school president. And actually it was the opposite. I was doing drugs. I'm not proud of that. Whatever degree you hear that, it was probably a lot more than I'm going to talk about this morning, of how close to the cusp I was of jail and everything else. But age 19, I had a significant emotional experience, a spiritual experience. I changed my life. I started my first little business at 19. I'd always been industrious, and the guy that would go around the neighborhood selling things and had a garden and things like that. But I at 19 started a business, and within a couple of years, really applying even some of the principles I'm going to talk about today, as far as strategy and knocking down the dominoes and creating things that are scalable and things that will compound. And the wheel, which is the real topic for this morning, how to get people on the wheel and take them around it by building relationships and giving great service and focusing on what you're really good at and the people you want to work with. I built a pretty nice little business. Small town, had 10 employees. We were open 24/7. And by age 26, I just had a huge, I call it being in a bubble. It's just like, Kyle, you need to sell your house, sell your business, and move to a bigger city. And I did. I did not have any, I'd never been to college. I had never really worked for anyone other than when I was in high school. So I moved to Dallas, and I started a little detail shop, and I just wanted to make $100 a day. We don't have time to get into the story and into the serendipitous events, this incredible serendipity. And on my podcast, when I interview people, every time, Sean, people like Ron White, right? The different people that we know together, it's these serendipitous things, and I always talk about opportunity precedes personal development. You get an opportunity and it wakes you up, and you're now turned on, and you do all those things. And that happened for me at age 27. And I got invited to a seminar, and I went to the seminar, and I did not have a job. And the guy putting on the seminar was looking to hire sales reps. Well, I said, what do you have to do? And he said, well, come to this little meeting we're doing afterwards. So they went around the room, everyone had to introduce themselves, and there were about 30 people. I mean, there were pastors, and there were professional salespeople, and there were people like Sean that could just get up and give a great presentation. It terrified me to even have to introduce myself. I'd never done that. I'd never spoken. So that was terrifying. I literally was shaking, I kid you not. And I was embarrassed, and I sat back down, and then I found out what the job description is. You had to make 100 cold calls a day to try and book yourself to speak 2 to 3 times. And then, 10 to 12 times a week, but to book yourself to speak a couple of times a day at companies like car dealerships and real estate offices that weren't necessarily the warmest market. I mean, you show up and they're like, what are you here to sell? And you go in to give a presentation of value, but at the end, sell tickets to a seminar. Every part of that was terrifying. It was outrageous to even think I could do that, but I felt this calling to do it. And that's why I say I felt like I was in a bubble. And how many of you can relate to that? It's like you're way outside your comfort zone, like way out, but you're supposed to do it. And maybe you even haven't had the results to do it. I wasn't even that far, because it was just a huge, crazy idea. Never mind, I was broke. Never mind, I didn't feel like I had a backup plan, because I'd never been to college, and I didn't have a skill set really, And so, but I felt called to do it. Well, little did I know, those 30 people that were far more qualified than I were would not last. They went away. And I was the guy that actually did what I was taught. It was crazy. I'll talk in a few minutes about, Jim Rohn taught me success is predictable. So I was given a plan that actually would work if you would do it. After a month, there were just 2 of us left out of the 30. And then Sean, I went on to become the top guy in the country for this guy. And it was just a crazy life experience change. Well, what that led to was then getting to meet Jim Rohn. I eventually went out on my own. I was the top guy in the country, but I wasn't making any money. And so we would get 200 or 300 people in our seminars. And I just had this mantra. Again, it was this God download. I want to get 2,000 people. I want to get 2,000 people. There's a guy named Jerry Patt that was doing Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar events. And there were these other people. It's like, okay, I want to get 2,000 people in the room. And I'm going to talk a lot today about strategic thinking. And Jim Rohn would quote the Bible and say, if you search, you'll find, but you got to go searching. Rarely does a good idea interrupt you. So I went searching, and I'm talking months of how do I get 2,000 people in the room? And maybe that's something you have to ask yourself. How do I get 1,000 people for my product? How do I get 100 people? How do I get 20 people? Whatever it is. And don't expect the answer to be immediate. If it's a big question, it might take some time. And for me, it took a few months. And one of the most gratifying feelings is a year later, you're doing it. You know, a year later, I had 1,300 people and I hired Brian Tracy and Og Mandino. Who knows who Og Mandino is? Wrote The Greatest Salesman in the World, changed so many lives. Brian Tracy, I'd seen Brian Tracy with Zig Ziglar, and when I saw him, I thought, you know, I want to work with this guy someday. Little did I know I'd be at his house a year later, you know, planning the future together. But the second event I did was 1,600 people in Chicago. Went to a city, didn't know one person, had never been to Chicago in my life. And 90 days later, we had 1,600 people in the room. And I hired, and again, it was Brian and Og. And then the third event, I got Jim Rohn, and it was Jim and Og. And then after that, it was Jim and Brian. And we would get 2,100 people, 2,500 people. Life is good. I had actually, you know, to our credit, my wife and my credit, Heidi, we built an amazing strategic plan. We would go into a city, all out effort, put it on, but then take 2 weeks off. So we're in Sacramento. So we go to Carmel, we go to Lake Tahoe, we go to San Francisco, we go to wine country. You know, we're in Washington, D.C. We're going to New York to see the Phantom of the Opera. We built a lifestyle around it. And by the way, I didn't have to have an office. We would office out of the apartments we lived in. We got to write everything off. Sean, we were making six figures, working hard, but playing hard, having a lifestyle, wrote all of it off because we were traveling. It seemed pretty brilliant. And then my wife got pregnant and my dad died. And all these series of events happened within a month. And a month after that, we had an event in Kansas City, and it just wasn't, you know, it just wasn't what it had been, and things had changed. And she was my partner in the business. And Jim Rohn, simultaneously, who was speaking at that event, told me that him and his partner were splitting up, that his partner owed him $425,000. I had heard him say that back in the Tony Robbins days, they were filling up all these events, and they shut that down when they were 800,000 in the hole. So I had this awareness, okay, Jim now's had two partners, and his partner wasn't Tony, but whoever was running that enterprise. And then currently, he had had these two partnerships that had lost a lot of money. And I thought, you know, I want to work with Jim. You know, partnerships hadn't worked out too well. We're pretty new to each other. I mean, I'd now promoted him 4 or 5 times, but we weren't, you know, we didn't talk much other than at the events. So I said, Jim, I want to make you an offer. You can't refuse. I want exclusive rights to all your speaking and all your products, and it'll be my company, and I'll pay you off the top. So you don't have to worry about, does the company make money ever again? I'm just going to pay you right off the top. So if I book you for a corporate event, you get paid off the top. If I create the product, I'll pay for it, and then I'll pay you a royalty. So we did a handshake. I can't tell you he was excited. He was like, well, you know, we'll see, but we did a handshake. And Sean, that first year, I took him from 20 speaking gigs because he was doing Herbalife separately. So he was a free agent doing Herbalife. I got exclusive rights on the rest of his public events. And within a year, I had him from 20 dates to 110. Tripled his speaking fee. And I started thinking about products, and I started thinking about, how do I create something that will distinguish Jim from the rest of the marketplace? In fact, I'm going to come back to that story when we get into connecting the dots in the wheel. But that one thing just blew everything up. And now I'm 110 dates, and we're creating a product that's blowing up. And Jim at the time had one audio and one book, and people would buy it all. And now, great, what are you going to do? So the thing about Jim Rohn, I thought Jim's the gateway drug to personal development. I mean, there would be doctors that would join Amway, hear Jim Rohn, leave Amway, say, I'm not doing network marketing again, but I am now a personal development fan because of Jim Rohn. Jim got to people a lot of, sometimes it was Zig that got to people, or Brian Tracy, Earl Nightingale, but Jim got to a lot of people. And so I now was getting to know all these speakers, because guess what? if you're a seminar promoter filling up huge rooms, who do you think wants to get to know you? All the rest of the speakers. I remember 1993, Les Brown pulling up in a limo to my offices saying, Jim Rohn changed my life. I'm now seeing Jim everywhere in the country. Will you promote me too? And that night, guess what? I went to dinner with Gladys Knight and Les Brown. And if you know who Gladys is, but they were married at the time. And then a month later, we're doing an event with Billy Preston, who was part of Sgt. Pepper's, of the Beatles, but Billy Preston, who wrote You Are So Beautiful and Nothing from Nothing. And doing an event called Music and Motivation. And, it was just incredible. And I was attracting it. So part of what we're going to talk about today is how do you set yourself up to pull from what you're really good at, really get clear on who you are, to then attract what you want versus pursue it. And if you build platforms, you will attract people. It's such a powerful principle. So this gets back to strategic and principle-based marketing. And I see most people operating in a very tactical mindset. And tactics are important. But tactics without the principles, without the strategy, just has you on a hamster wheel, and nothing is compounding, nothing's duplicating. And so I thought, okay, I now have all these people I'm booking Jim for. I have this audience. They're no one's better than Jim. And so I started Your Success Store like in '94. And I now started selling Brian Tracy stuff and Les Brown and Mark Victor Hansen. I started booking them for events. So I was probably now booking another 100 corporate engagements for all of those guys. Someone on our inner circle called the other night, brought up Nito Quabine. I'm like, yeah, I used to book Nito all the time. Bob Berg, used to book Bob all the time. And that was through our other company, Your Success Store. But that came from the thing I'm going to talk about today, the wheel. You get people on the wheel, and now you have a relationship. And so I'll get to that here in a minute. And there's some really cool principles that everything I did was a first for me. And so I always say we all start at zero. I'd never spoken. I'd never gone in to sell after giving a presentation. I had never been an agent for a speaker. I had never created products. I'd never published a book. So everything we do, we learn by doing. I'm not a big fan, and I'm generalizing here, but I'm not a big fan of doing a lot of learning that doesn't apply to what you're doing. I meet those people in the seminar business. They're always learning, but they're not necessarily applying. And so I like to go where the rubber meets the road. It can be a form of procrastination, right? It's like, let me just learn some more. Let me learn some more. Versus what is my current situation? So I'm going to ask you questions today that are going to confront you a little bit. And when I coach people, I see that all the time. It's like they think, okay, we're going to talk once a week. Well, their homework might take them 3 months because really nothing matters until you answer some critical questions. And that's what I had the good fortune to do in the seminar business. I got to ask some questions that took me from 200 people to 2,000. That's what I got to do with Jim Rohn. I took him from 20 to 110 dates and created this huge business that did exist, and nothing changed about his message. It changed was the strategic mindset in creating things that would compound over time. I've seen it in my industry, people churn through people versus building a business that will compound and have referrals and have repeat. And it just gets down to intention and strategy. But going back to the story, we had a thriving business. I was publishing books. I was promoting all these speakers. I had exclusive rights to Jim Rohn. And then the internet came. And Sean, I was one of the first to adapt. And most speakers, I watched two things happen. And I won't name names, but the people that were at the top of the mountain, and they were good friends of mine, they're like, business is too good. I don't have time to mess with the internet. And the second group were, okay, I'm going to use the internet to sell. For me, I use the internet to get people on the wheel, and I'll get to the wheel in a minute. So I used it to create prospects and build a relationship and not try and sell. And guess what? In the beginning of the internet, people weren't using the internet to buy. They were using it to search, to research, to learn. They would actually go on and research something, then call the company directly to buy. And so I figured that out. So I started creating content, and you know, we continued to do big events. Many of you might have been at some of my big events. Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar. I do big events here in Dallas and LA, where we would have 10 incredible speakers. And fortunately, I would have film crews and we would film, and it's still with us today. If you've ever seen the 2004 event or the 2001 event, and a lot of those, every one of these products were in, you know, they came from an intention to create them. And a lot of the products I created, Jim didn't even know about till afterwards. And here's why: because Jim had an exclusive with Herbalife, and that really was his first love. He had been with them before he and I worked. He loved watching them go from $1 billion to $2 billion to $3 billion. He really loved that relationship. And so everything I did with him was really up to me to, you know, fortunately I had the autonomy to do it. And a couple of times I might not have. One's a product called Building Your Network Marketing Business. He would have vetoed, but I, you know, used some relational equity there to pull that off. And we sold millions of that too. And that, again, has been a product that's done so well. But in 2007, 2006, I had a personal situation going on where I was feeling I was too maxed out, and I had someone that wanted to buy my company. So I ended up selling all my companies to the guys who bought Success Magazine. So Jim Rohn International, Your Success Store, all those were my companies. And I sold it. I worked with them for a year. Little did I know Jim would pass away in 2009. I got to do a very special Jim Rohn tribute where I gathered all his friends, Zig, Brian, Mark, you know, in Dallas, LA, and I got to watch it with him. That's very special. Larry Thompson, who's been part of one of Sean's calls with you guys, Don Hobbs, who's now the president of Success Magazine. I pulled in about 50 of Jim's friends, peers, and I got to watch it with him a month before he passed. That's probably the most special day I ever had with Jim. But Jim changed my life. I sold the companies, I retired for 6 years, and then I came back out. That's when I met Sean. And the reason I'm saying this is I had to start over. So for many of you that are saying, listen, I don't have $1 million, I don't have all that. Well, neither did I to begin with. And then when I came back out, it really gave me empathy for anyone starting over. I actually did a book called Passionistas, and it was, you know, mostly millennial women. And it was along that principle of, if you're starting out and you got zero, what are you going to do? And the number one thing is you got to bring value. And so when I came back out, I realized now more than ever, I have to be relevant. I have to bring value, and you have to be patient. It's going to take time. And so everything I'm going to share today, I've lived twice. You know, I've lived it multiple times, and I'm not going to share one thing today I haven't lived and done. This is my own experience. Take what applies to you. I've coached Darren Hardy for 3 years, way before he blew up. I coached Robin Sharma. I coached Robert Helms of the Real Estate Guys. I've coached some of you I see here today. I've coached Tom Burns, who's been with you, Sean, you know, for 3 years, been working with Tom Burns. And it's all based on what I'm going to talk today. And it's principle-based marketing, and I swear it works. And so you just got to take what applies to you. When I came back out, you know, I used the same things I'm going to talk about today. And so to me, marketing is simply just connecting the dots. And so I want to share a couple more quick things. I know I'm laying a lot of principles, but I'm okay with it because this is all principle based. I could give you 20 tactics and your life will not change. Now we're gonna get into some tactics, but does that point come through? Like, you could get an Instagram tactic, that's not going to change your life, but you could get an insight of how you approach the world and approach with your message that could totally change everything. And that's been the experience I've watched with so many different people. I'm going to give you 4 quick things that Jim Rohn, his mentorship, I could give you 50, but I'm going to give you 4 that really changed my life. And I invite you to consider these. The first one that really changed my life when I started working with Jim is he said, and you've heard him say this, I'm sure, if you're a fan or a student, for things to change, you have to change. The major key to your future is you. And wow, how relevant today. The major key to your future, believe it or not, contrary to popular opinion by many, is not who's president. It's not who is empowering the government. It's not the economy. It's not Bitcoin. It's not COVID. Because listen, you can have 2 people 10 years later have totally different results, right? Same president, same economy, same situation. But the things that matter most about your future, you get to determine. Your thoughts, your attitude, the books you're going to read, are you going to save or spend, or are you going to watch listen to a podcast, watch a TED Talk, or watch a comedy? And that's okay. I mean, I'm not making judgments. I'm just saying we get to determine what goes in our mouth, in our mind, who we spend time with, where we invest time. And so that was life-changing, because honestly, I was kind of politically motivated. I had opinions. I thought I was a victim of what all these outside circumstances, how much control that would impact my life. I was actually depressed because things weren't going in the world like I'd hoped they were. And Jim's like, no, none of that matters. Truly, it doesn't. The things that matter most, you get to control. How empowering. How empowering is that to know that 10 years from now, the person I'm going to become is the biggest determining factor in my life. And so, that was so powerful. The second thing was, Jim said, success is predictable. Now, he would talk about plants or a vineyard or a tree. But if you plant the seed at the right time, at the right place, you water it, you take good care of it, over time, eventually, you're going to have fruit. More times than not. Not every time, but more times than not. You're going to have a harvest. And again, how powerful, because a lot of people, when I see them not actually putting in the activity, it's because they don't have faith in the process. They think, if I plant the seed, it's not going to come up. But when you really realize success is predictable, and if you follow a plan, and this is pretty much true across the board, someone gives you a plan and they say it'll work, you just have to have faith in it and go do it. Now, it doesn't work every time. And sometimes, a tornado comes through, or a freeze, as we know in Dallas, will come through and just kill everything. And all you can do is just go replant. The next thing I'll share is that I'm on be a student, not a follower. And this is a big one, because a lot of times we think we're afraid to get too much information. We want to, let's say I'm a Tony Robbins fan, and Tony says something different than Joe Dispenza, and Joe says something different than Darren Hardy, and Kyle says something different than Sean, or whatever. We don't all have to agree on the same thing. All you have to do is be a student. And this is my favorite part of that quote, is make sure everything you do is the product of your own conclusion. So take what Sean says, take what I say, take what Tony says, take what Darren says, and then you make your own decision. And that was powerful for me. I didn't have to, and Jim would say, hey, we're not trying to create a cult here, right? Take what we say and use it. What you don't use, no offense. We're not taking it personal. Sean, my fourth point just escaped me, and that happens sometimes. But let me jump now into, and it'll come back and I'll share it, because
it will. But I just want to jump in for a second.
Sure.
How many of you heard a news story about Jim Rohn you never heard before? Drop a 1 in the chat. How many of you are loving this? Drop an L in the chat. This is golden. You don't get this we went to the mountain and we found the guy. So, Kyle, thank you for sharing this. I heard a couple of things today I hadn't heard in our 7 years of friendship and hundreds of hours of togetherness. So, I'm just glad when we get you in these moments and get you rolling. There's some cool stuff comes out. So, thanks, brother. I
So
appreciate
even
you.
my good 25-year friend, Robert Helms, introduces me as the guy that worked for Jim Rohn, right? And there's nuances, right? Now, here's who really knows the story: Brian Tracy, Mark Victor Hansen, Les Brown, Darren Hardy, and Dennis Waitley. They've all been on my podcast, and that's all been because of friendship. It's because they were there when we were doing this, and they saw, even where Jim went. And here's the thing: Jim's message, I think, is the greatest message in the world. But marketing is important, and the dots I hope to connect today are: marketing for me is about principles and strategy and tactics. So let me just jump real quick into connecting the dots. So if you have a product, service, or business, the first thing you have to do when it comes to marketing is connect the dots. If someone gives you 5 ideas, they might not fit your business. So, Sean, that's why oftentimes I'm not a big fan of people hiring out digital marketers and hiring out their social media. They hire everything out, and they don't realize marketing is the lifeblood of their company. And the people they're hiring out oftentimes aren't connecting the dots. They're just trying to, again, do these tactical things. Everything that's worked well for me on a huge scale has not come from the tactic themselves. They've come from the strategic decisions that had to be worked through, that, again, when you hire that out, is rarely even considered. And so here's some things when I talk about connecting the dots. You got to look at your product and service and say, who's the competition? That's number one. Kind of take a look around. Number two, what's your secret sauce? I know Sean talks about your secret sauce. What makes you special? And I'll get into secret sauce just a little bit when I get into the wheel and creating the wheel with Jim Rohn. Number three is, who's your avatar? And that's a biggie. When you really refine your thinking, are you creating products and services and advertising that really get to the avatar? Sometimes the path of least resistance will lead you down a path to the wrong avatar. You know what I'm saying? Let's say I could go create a product or service that would be easy for me to sell, but if it's to the wrong person, that's not really going to be strategic and compound. But here's the big one: is what you're doing, um, is it fitting your short and long-term goals? So if I'm connecting the dots, I'm trying to look into the future and say, what do I want to accomplish? In the past, I'm like, I want to get 2,000 people in the room. How do I do that? Or, it's whatever your big long-term goal is. And then to connect those dots is the path you're on going to get you there. And I can promise, if you'll invest some time thinking about that, that can be one of the most powerful things you do. So I could spend a long time on connecting the dots, but I'll go to the next one. And the next one is tactics and principles. Now, tactics change with technology. So, whether it's advertising or, building a list, whatever it's going to be, technology is constantly changing the tactics you use, but principles don't change. And so today, in the loudness of all the noise, I'm constantly hearing tactics. I'm rarely hearing the principles. And I think that's why, Sean, in the 90s, I was able to build a big list. But then when the internet came, I was able to do it, retire, come back out, and now, do it again, because it's the principles. The principles don't change. And I'll share a few of those with you in a minute. But first, let's just talk tactics. So, tactics, that would be everything from social media platforms to email list, to how you message people, to how you advertise, to the software you use, the technology you use. Everything's a tactic. Three-way calls if you're in network marketing. All those are tactics, and they're going to constantly shift and change based on technology. Principles, I'll give you, I have like 12 I share, but I'll mention 4 or 5. Principle number one is to have a great product. A lot of people want to go out and market and they have crap. And I'm sorry, If you have a great product, now that will compound. How many of you have ever referred something because you liked it, right? How many of you can just really become advocates? So when I created the quote book of Jim's, this took me 10 months because it didn't exist. There were no listed Jim Rohn quote books. And I actually did a hardbound book first. So this was 365 quotes, hardbound, leatherette, really nice. But the main goal was this, and I had a to and a from, and a great quote by Jim, powerful quotes, a place to make notes. But that was to empower my advocates, to give them a tool to go hand out. And they did. They bought 10, 100, 1,000 at a time. I sold one company 100,000. I went on to do them for Zig. And so, like Jeffrey, I know you've seen Tom give these out. He still gives them out. I did that. He would buy them from me. I did them for Mark Victor Hansen. I did them for Brian Tracy. I did them for Dennis Waitley. And they all had this concept of creating a tool that your advocates can give out. But here's the key, it's got to be good. And a lot of people have copied it and they show me what they did, and it's just not that good. It's not that compelling. So the first principle of marketing is to have great products. Here's another one I would share, is to be relational. I see a lot of people churning through people. And so they think, okay, I got a thing now. People aren't going to really like it probably. And, but if I can sell them, I'll just do enough sales numbers to make it up. Again, that's not going to compound. I want things that compound over time. I want things that will knock down the dominoes. This quote book, I only sold for a few dollars, but people spent tens of thousands of dollars with me. I remember Jeff Olson and Eric Worre in 1993 meeting with me about trying to get Jim and get involved in TPN. And I actually brought all the speakers into TPN. If you know what TPN was from 93, 94, 95, Les Brown, yeah, all those, I brought every speaker in. And I remember sitting at a table and Jeff pulled this out of his briefcase and he said, "Did you create this?" And I said, "I did." I remember Mark Sparks, who sold Wise Trade for 100 million, wanting to start TSTN. And I did partner with him, and I brought Darren Hardy in to be the president right before I sold my companies, and then made Darren the publisher of Success because I sold it to Success. But Mark, same way, he's like, "So did you create these products?" And he started showing them to me. Now, how about if they had been crappy products? Do you think those same conversations would have happened? So I'm going to encourage you, a principle is to have great stuff, right? Great products, but then number two, be relational and help the people on your list want to refer you, right? And that will compound over time. Here's another principle for me, and we're going to get into this on the wheel, is I want to have, if I'm having a conversation with someone at an event, let's say I meet someone at an event, that's a great place to meet people, right? How many people do you think you meet that want to sell you? Does that work? Can you, like, listen, I don't want to step on toes, but sometimes someone knocks on your door from a religious organization and they have questions. Now, do you think they really want to hear what you have to say, or do they feel pretty confident what they have you need, and that no matter what they say, that's their agenda? We want to, so that you feel that you're being sold, right? So I don't even think about that. All I'm thinking about is if they can get on my list, it's called the wheel, put them on the wheel, get them on the list, and then build a relationship. Now, how am I going to build a relationship? I got to talk to them. That's why I'm not a fan of funnels. Funnels have an agenda. Get them on the list, sell them something. The wheel is you get them on the list and you just talk to them. Now, occasionally you sell them something, but you don't have an agenda behind it. So a principle for me is if I'm meeting someone, I want to get them on my list. I don't want to try and sell them. I'll eventually sell them if I have something they want that's of value. And if I don't, we won't, and that's all good too. So that would be a principle. So now I am going to jump into this thing called the wheel. So in 1993, I made Jim an offer he couldn't refuse, and I drew on a sheet of paper a big circle. And I put a hub in the middle. So I'm going to encourage everyone to do this. draw a big circle, put a hub, and put your name in the center of the hub because you are the hub. And someone says, well, I got 3 businesses. Well, so do I. That's okay. You're still the hub. And so then draw some spokes, and each spoke is a product or service you offer. And so Jim at the time had a book, he had an audio series, and he had a 1-day seminar and a 2-day seminar. And then here's maybe the most important part of the wheel. So you got the wheel, you got the hub, you got the spokes. The next question was, I drew an arrow, thank you, Sean, I drew an arrow at the top going onto the wheel. And this is what changed my life. This is how I built the 8-figure business, was this arrow. Because the question is, how are you going to get people on the wheel? Now, a lot of people do that through aggressive marketing. And oftentimes that turns into this thing called churning. They churn through people. It's painful for me to watch. And they violate the principles. Their tactics violate the principle of relationships. So here's a good quote. Never let a tactic violate a principle. I don't care how good the tactic is, you know, and again, it's up for you. It's for you to decide. Like personally, I don't like it when people message me that I don't know in Facebook and say, Kyle, what do you do? That's probably called unfriend. Because again, it's a tactic. But you know, if instead of saying, what do you do? They could find out, right? So I already feel manipulated and I already feel like, so there's probably better ways to do things like that relationally. It might be go like and comment on some of my posts, right? But endear themselves to me through, you know, interacting and having a long-term plan. But no, this quick fix tactic of messaging people they don't even know violates that principle. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying tactics sometimes don't work, but they start churning. Now, again, there's exceptions. So I don't want to get caught up in that because that's really probably a bad example. But my point is, how do you get people on the wheel? And then once you get them on the wheel, take them around to your different spokes, but through building a relationship. So with Jim, and so I'm about to give you the 5 things that determine the spokes you should pick, because your spokes are important. So here I have this wide open ocean of Jim Rohn exclusivity, handshake, granted, he's a little nervous. I had some people try and come in and undermine it. I had all kinds of attacks from outside people that thought Jim made a horrific decision. But fortunately, I got quick results. And that's a whole, Sean, I could tell you a story that no one's probably ever heard of how I got the 110 dates in such a short time. But that's a whole other story. But, you know, how are you going to get people on the wheel and take them around to the different spokes? And so here I have this wide open sea of opportunity with Jim. And so I'm thinking, do I need to add some spokes? Now, here's one of the best spokes you can have. It's a product or service that's also customer acquisition. That's what this was. And that was created by using the wheel. This came through what I used to create the wheel is it passed the test of the 5 things. And it was a product that's also customer acquisition. It's a way to get people on the wheel and actually sell. And so here's my 5. Number 1, I want a new spoke, because here I have Jim and it's like, I'm going to go create new spokes. You only had 4. What am I going to do? But I want to get people on the wheel too. New spoke, but get people on the wheel. So number 1, is it part of your core business? So anytime anyone approaches me with an idea, a thought, if it's not part of my core business, it's a no. I don't do one-offs. Here's why I don't do one-offs. One-offs aren't going to help compound the business I currently have. I don't want a quick paycheck that doesn't compound. It's why, you know, it's why even though I think I could trade stocks, I don't, because that's a transaction, but it doesn't compound. You know, so activities that don't compound, that can't, you do it today, I'm into plant a seed, and down the road, I'm having a harvest that just keeps harvesting, that keeps harvesting, that keeps duplicating itself. Sean, me being here this morning with you is a product of everything I talk about. We met in 2012. I didn't try and hunt him down. I did invite him to my inner circle, or I invited him to a 1-day event. He came, and that's another thing we'll talk about. He came. So here's the thing, you have the wheel. I invited him to a 1-day event. He came, then he joined the inner circle. And 5 years later, I'm part of his call this morning, right? Those are relationships. So whatever activities I did along the way continue to compound. So it needs to be part of your core business, number one. And so the key part of that is just don't have a bunch of one-offs. Number two, I want it to be part of my secret sauce. So when I'm thinking of a new product for Jim, what is really going to capture who he is? So when I started thinking about what makes Jim special, not in use the word secret sauce back then, right? I think I first heard the term secret sauce when Mark Sparks and them, I was actually selling Jim Rohn International. And they said, dude, with all your secret sauce, you're not charging enough. I said, what are you talking about? And so, that was probably 2006. But back then, what Sean teaches on secret sauce, what that represents was similar to my thought process on what makes Jim special, what makes him unique. And for Jim, if you've heard him, he was a wordsmith. He could take complicated, make it simple. He could do it with humor. He could say it better than anyone else. And as I said, he didn't have a list of quotes. So I had to go through his seminars. I had to go through his book, through his audio series. He never even knew I was doing this till it was done. Because, he was in LA, I was in Dallas. But this took a lot of thought, but I got it. It's like, this is something that captures who he is, and no one else does that. No one else has his depth of ability to say things in such a magical way. Number three, it needs to focus on my avatar. It needs to be a product or service. I could give you a lot of examples of that, but I just know who my avatar is. So just because I can create something doesn't mean I do. I've had the good fortune of Phil Collin of Def Leppard, filming at his house. He has been to my house for a mastermind. Sean was there. I've been backstage multiple times. I went to his son's 1-year birthday party last year. He came onto my inner circle call just to do Q&A. He was on my podcast recently. Amazing guy. They've sold 100 million albums. That's a pretty big audience. But I don't try and create things because that's just not my avatar. So I could, but it would be a one-off. So, and I've tested it. Don't get me wrong. I've tested it with, creating some calls and opt-ins, and I've tested it. It's just not, it's not ideal for what I'm creating. So you got to figure out the product or service. Is it really going to benefit who you want to reach? Number four, and this is the biggest, is it strategic? Is it going to knock down the dominoes? If I go do an event has to knock down at least 5 dominoes for me. So I'm just saying, when you think of a product or service, and this can be, so if you're in direct sales, you can be thinking, do I do Zoom calls? Do I do live events? Do I put together a coaching program? Do I go sell this service? When you think of all the tactical things you can do, those are spokes on a wheel. If you go create a coaching program, that's a spoke. If you create, because spokes don't have to involve money. Advertising is a spoke. And so, when I talked about earlier, a principle for me is acquire a prospect, not try and sell. Example, when I would do big 2-day events and I'm running ads in the Los Angeles Times, I did not put the price. I didn't put the location. And I'm thinking I might not even put the date, because what would happen is I'm not trying to sell people. I'm trying to get people to reach out to me to inquire, because I'm putting hooks out for Jim Rohn fans. So I know my avatar, Jim Rohn fans. I write the ad to reach Jim Rohn fans, but I don't want them to self-select if they can come. So I'm not trying to sell them a ticket. I'm trying to get them to raise their hand and say, send me more information. That's pretty brilliant, right? I figured that on my own. I didn't read a book. I figured out because the principle of acquiring a prospect is more important than trying to sell someone. Because if I could get them to get their information and the date's wrong, the location's wrong, the price is wrong, at least they're on my list. And down the road, I might get them. And that's worked for me thousands of times. So when I do advertising, I'm applying the principle more than the tactic. So that's, your advertising is a spoke. And so you just want to take it through these different things that will be strategic. I know Sean and I've talked before about different products. And so I'm always thinking, what's the one thing that's going to knock down all the right dominoes and lead to the next thing? And that can be behavior. It can be all kinds of things. And here's the other thing. I want to make sure it fits my short and long-term goals. I say no to things all the time if it doesn't fit my long-term goals. Where's that going to take me? And, my good friend Darren Hardy's one of the best I've ever seen at saying no. He said, the podcast he did with me is the only podcast he said yes to in 4 years. This is a great line, by the way. I do encourage you to write this down. One hard no will take care of 1,000 other no's. If there's certain things, like let's say you're on keto and you don't eat pie, if you say, I just don't eat pie, period. That one hard no will take care of 1,000 no's. And so for him, he doesn't do podcasts. Now there's exceptions. He doesn't do forwards to books. He coaches some billionaires. So he gets asked to write a forward to a book. In his heart, he's just like, I just don't do forwards to books. End of story. People that are Facebook friends that aren't part of my inner circle, that aren't part of my books, will say, hey, I'm going to be in town. Do you do lunch? That's that's just a no. I don't do lunch. I have too many people that are part of my world, coaching clients or whatever. I have a hard enough time, getting with that. I'm not going to do lunch with a Facebook friend. And that bothers some people, but I'm just so clear on, that's just not, that's just the way it is. You got to find what your hard no's are. So, what is going to fit your short-term and long-term goals, and just be really committed to it. So I started thinking through this. I came up with the quote book, and I came up with a lot of other things, but this thing moved 6 million copies virally, but I checked every box. This is a good line, empower your advocates. I see more people say, hey, will you do an affiliate program, or will you do this or do that? And then they make it hard. People aren't going to do favors for you or help you if you make it hard. You got to make it easy. And by the way, here's a different side note, and Sean does this as well. I buy 100 copies of a book and give it away. I've had when Phil Collin of Def Leppard was on our call, I said, hey, will you sign 20 books? Bob Berg, will you sign 20 books? Kevin Eastman, will you sign 20 books? I'll give you the names, and I'll pay full price. Please send them to me, and then I'll mail them out. Now, it might take me a month or two to mail them out to people because I like to package things. But guess what? Who knows who Eric Worre is? Okay. Eric gave me a book. He actually gave me a box of 10 books, all by Ayn Rand, leather bound, each of the different ones, in 1993. I've never mentioned that book without mentioning Eric Worre. How brilliant. I've sent people books. Guess what? The next thing, when they get them, what do I see? I see on Facebook a picture of all the books thanking me, right? Yes. So when you give someone a book, and I kind of intuitively knew that with this, you sign it, you write a note in it, and you include, like, I don't just pack up books. I give books I think will mean something to that person. So I bought 100 of Mark and Crystal's book, Ask, but I don't send it to everyone. I send it, I include it in a package with, I pick out different books to give out. And for less than, $20, you can really give a powerful gift. Now, here's the bigger thing. How about if it changed their life? And I have the good fortune of being told that so many times. Kyle, the Jim Rohn books you gave me changed my life, or that one particular book. And so I'm a big believer in giving out books. And I didn't mention this, but I did Chicken Soup for the Entrepreneur Soul with Mark and Jack. And I was promoting Mark in 94, and he said, Kyle, we're going to sell 100 million books. At the time, they'd sold 1 million. And I'm like, Mark, you're crazy. You're such an exaggerator. You know, I was like, dude, if you sell 10 million, I will be blown away, because that just didn't happen. Well, they went on to sell 500 million. And Mark really expanded my thinking, but I really understood back then the power of giving away a book that can impact someone's life. And then you sign it, it doesn't cost that much. So I'm a big believer in that. And that's why I do my books. So it's like, and I didn't plan on this as a commercial, but I'm proud of this book. Who's seen Success Habits of Super Achievers, right? So I have Darren Hardy, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Mark Victor Hansen, Lisa Haisha, Mike Muni of Act Software. I mean, these are all people who've been on the John Assaraf, Phil Collin of Def Leppard. And guess what I do though? If it's good, it's good. So I just keep doing it to and from. And I make it easy for our authors to go give them away. Now, what's going to help an author give away a book? It needs to be good. Back to principle number 1. So create good stuff you're proud of, and then you will have advocates go give it away. If you're in direct sales and you're giving away your products, and I'm sure you guys are great at this, go that extra mile to really make it nice and personalize it. And just do, those extra mile type of things. But so back to the wheel with Jim Rohn, I got really clear about what our goals were, what was important, what Jim's secret sauce was, who my avatar was. And then I went on an all-out assault of acquiring people onto the wheel. Everything I did was get people on the wheel. Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, 1996. I said, Mark, I'm looking at this, your chicken soup books. I don't see any way people can get a hold of you. Why don't you put an insert? This is all just going straight to your publisher. You need to put an insert where people can fill it out and send it to you. He said, God, that's a good idea. A month later, Sean, when I got a chicken soup book, there it is, right? So Mark implemented everything I did, every audio, every easing, every single thing I do today. It's about giving people an opportunity to get on my list. And then I talk to them. I don't funnel them into an agenda. I just build a relationship. And so let's talk about that. There's 3 more things I'll just touch base on real quick. But one is building the audience. And then number 2 is talking to the audience. And so I have friends. Well, let me just say this. I've been doing this a long time. I know speakers who made $1 million a year that never built an audience. They've disappeared. I know speakers that were unheard of that now make millions of dollars on their programs because they built the audience. I know authors who never built the audience. It was good to see like Tom Peters finally decide, I think I'll do a blog, and I remember when he did that. And I know authors that never did. I know doctors who have built an audience. Guess what? If I'm a doctor and it's flu season, I'll probably send out a notice. Hey, we're doing flu shots. If any of you with kids that are in sports, they have to get a physical, in the summer before they can do. I would be sending out those notices. I would be constantly talking about my services. Now, you don't even have to sell. You just say, hey, we're taking appointments or we're available. And then they decide those type of doctors that build a list then tend to be the ones that say, listen, now we offer a 8-week training program on nutrition, or we're offering laser for your skin. The doctors who have, Sean and I have a friend, Carl Jahari, who's in the inner circle. He's a chiropractor, but now he trains other chiropractors how to build a business. And, he's actually Grant Cardone's guy for stem cells. But does Carl build a list and talk to it? The answer is Jim Rohn would say, of course he does, right? So you have to build an audience. Now, I also have good friends who would nod their head and say, yes, that's so true. And then I got to just say, Ron White, my good friend, 2-time U.S. memory champion. I was Ron's agent. And he'd be on Martha Stewart. And I said, dude, did you put this hook in and that hook in to get people to go find you? He goes, I always forget to do that. And after 10 years, I'm like, I'm going to sit you down, Ron, and we're going to have this conversation for the last time. You've got to build a list. And everything you do, if you're on a podcast, you're not selling. but you are telling people here's how you get on the list. So Sean, is it okay if I do that real quick? I had no intention of doing this, but if you
Do it, brother. Listen, does anybody want Kyle to stop? We've got 117 people. They're not moving, so do it, brother.
Well, here's the deal, and I'm going to prove the point. I'm not going to sell you this book. I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to give you about 10 others, and I'm going to give you footage, my 2-hour video interview of Darren Hardy and Les Brown and Phil Collin. All you got to do is send an email. I'm not going to send you to a website because most people won't go, right? So there's a clue. When you tell people to go to your website, they won't. And if you tell people to go opt in, then it cuts down in half. So half won't go, the half that go end up not opting in. So I just make it real simple. Send me an email. I'll do that little extra dirty work. It's not even that automated on my end because I don't mind, because that is the lifeblood of your business, is people that, this is so beautiful. I'm not hunting, I'm fishing, I'm putting out something. And if you want it, you'll say yes. So the only people that will send me an email want it. Right, Sean? That's great. And then there's no agenda, there's no funnel, but you will find out when I offer podcasts and different things like that. I'll give you the updates. And occasionally I might give you something to say yes to. And that's what I teach. I teach, bring great value, and occasionally give some people to say something yes to. But this is powerful. Sean, I've been on some big podcasts recently because someone got this book and they said, I'm blown away. So I've already name dropped all the people on it: Tom Ziegler, Mark Victor Hansen, Todd Stoudemire, and of course, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Mark Victor Hansen, all good friends
Kevin Eastman,
Mike Muni,
Lisa Haisha,
Kelly Calabrese, just Tom Burns,
Colonel Tim Cole. So
yes.
There's amazing. So I know they're going to be asking for the email. Yeah, they're going, what? Where do I send the email?
Here it is. info@kylewilson.com. info@kylewilson.com, and put Sean. Just put Sean, and I'll catch the pass. But if you want to tell me a little bit about yourself, you can do that too. If you can say, if Jim changed your life, if Sean's changed your life, I do want to know the story. This is again where I'm different. Yes, I'm busy, but not too busy to do that. So I see people, they're trying to go build their business, but they automate everything and they don't really connect. Again, I said relationships trump churning through people. So, yeah, go ahead and share it with me. And then some people say, hey, Kyle, they'll tell the story and they'll say, hey, Kyle, how do you fill up seminar rooms? And then I'm going to say, well, that's like asking me how to make a watch. So I can't answer that open-ended question. But, I've got blogs and podcasts that will answer that. So, Sean, I'm taking it to the next level of, you can't answer every question, but there's some you can answer and some you can't, right? And then you give resources. info@kylewilson.com, put Sean in the subject, and I will send you a link to all this stuff to go download it. And yeah, let me know if you're a Jim Rohn fan and if there's something, you never know. I do send out some Jim Rohn stuff too, if there's a big fan that wants something in particular. But we were talking about building an audience and then talking to it. So if I meet someone, this is gold. If I meet someone at an event, so I have like 8 ways people get on my list. And I do an inventory. About every 3 to 6 months, I take a step back and I say, who do I work with? Who's in my inner circle? Who's coaching clients? Who are in my books? And I say, where do they come from? And I literally go through where they came from. I have ledgers when people are part of a book project. These books, we have typically about 35 people. And in my ledger, I put where they came from. Oh, that came from the Robert Helms podcast. That came from the event I attended. That came when I, was at James Malinchuk's event. He interviewed me. I always want to know the genesis of every relationship. Oh, that came through Sean. That came through Kelly. And so I'm fascinated by that. And so what I want to do by doing an inventory, it helps me know what works and what doesn't work. And what works, I want to do more of that, right? Oh, that came through my 52 lessons. That came through Facebook. That's interesting. Our good friend, Tammy Mitchell. Tammy was a music fan. So she came to my Phil Collin mastermind when Phil Collin of Def Leppard was at my house doing a mastermind. That's kind of cool. That's an invitation only. But I didn't know Tammy. And on this, again, on Facebook, on my telling my story about Phil, it's going to be in town. She said, I'm a huge fan. Now, guess what she had been doing before that? She'd been liking posts, commenting on posts. She didn't come swoop in one time and ask for something. She had been liking and commenting. So she had endeared herself to me. So I said, listen, I don't know if I have a seat or not, but if I do, I'll let you know. And 2 days before she came, Tammy has probably sent me hundreds of thousands of dollars of business, literally, because she joined the inner circle. She introduced me to 3 people that became big coaching clients. One of them then, had all their people be part of my books, the Kennys, right? And Steve Lloyd. And it's just this long list of people. Now that was a one-off. I wouldn't have thought that with Phil Collin, but you never know. But here's my point. When you talk to your list, occasionally give them something to say yes to. So I do some things. My stuff tends to be, my high end is not very high end. Like people say I don't charge enough, but I like the fish to jump in the boat. And that's the only reason. I'm lazy. I'm being honest. I don't like to sell. So I'm not hunting. And even when I fish, I don't want to work too hard. So I just make it irresistible. And either they say yes or no. But it is high end. But I do occasional stuff that's not. And so I do a thing called memory and marketing. And I'm not trying to sell it because we don't have any lined up. But what happens is, this is another tidbit. When people spend time with you, it builds trust. And so Jeffrey, I'm looking at a lot of people here, Jeffrey Miller, multiple people that became part of what I'm doing because they became part of a low dollar thing. A couple of $100 thing led to them having a deeper relationship. Sean came to a one-day mastermind. We got to build trust. He said, wow, I'm vibing with Kyle. So he joined my group. So if you can create things, so rule number 1, get people on the list, talk to them, and occasionally give them something to say yes to build a relationship. That could be a 2-hour call. That could be a virtual event. That could be a half-day event. But find some way to really build a relationship. And then you can offer your next thing. And here's the other big tidbit on that. It takes time. You don't go create a vineyard in a day, no matter whose coaching program you bought. No matter what marketing guy's program you bought, you don't build a vineyard in a day. It takes time. And so something I'm really proud of is when I started over, I still grew this organically. I don't do Instagram follow, unfollow. I don't do anything that's not organic. And here's why. Cold traffic, that's the people that are going to complain. They're going to have problems. They're not going to know you. They're not going to trust you. They're going to be like, when I do these books, there's an application, but I still have to do a call with the person because it's one of those things where if they're cold and they don't know me, I don't want to live with 6 months of someone not trusting me. So I really want that, I want to build the relationship. And so I think when you can spend time with people and they start to trust you, that's so much better than trying to go from an aggressive cold traffic advertising model to selling someone, which I just don't even do because I don't even want the aggravation of someone not understanding the over delivery of value. And so when you can over deliver value, make it an irresistible offer, then the fish jump on the boat, but it's going to take time. It really will. And so as long as you know that, everything I'm talking about is compounding and having a long-term plan. And what will happen? A year is going to come and go, right, Sean? 2 years is going to come and go. 5 years is going to come and go. 5 years from now, you're going to be exactly based on what you did now. Everyone I know that has built amazing businesses have built it compounding. And unfortunately, people I know equally as well are starting over still. And I'm talking speakers, authors, seminar promoters, marketers, professionals. Some people are always chasing the home run and they just keep starting over because they're churning through people versus the things that will truly work. And when you do all the right stuff, good things happen. I want to congratulate all of you for showing up for Sean's daily call. I mean, and the magic happens by showing up, right? You got to show up. And so that's, you never know what one day the idea is going to click for you. But Sean, just to kind of wrap this up and we'll go to Q&A, is that you got to build an audience. So here's 3 things to building an audience. Number 1, you have to be intentional. If you're not intentional, you won't do it. And I think I said I was going to list some ways you can build an audience. One is through doing your own events. One is through social media. One is by attending other events or places people are that you know. If you show up, you start meeting people when you show up for different things. One thing is through referrals. So take good care of your people, take good care of your advocates. I'd say that's the biggest source of all my business is referrals. So, you know, just, you got to find out what works for you to go find those. But number 1 is intention. And that is probably the hardest thing. People think, oh, that's a good idea. And then they're not intentional. When people come up to me, this is a guy named Keith Elias. He was 6 years in the NFL and he runs the entire player re-engagement for NFL players. And I coach him. He's part of my books. And he said, Kyle, and he is a phenomenal speaker. He said, Kyle, I give a great presentation and people come up, they ask for my business card. They're going to have me come speak and I never hear from them. And I'm like, yeah, you're doing it all wrong, Keith. Sean knows that voice of Kyle. And he's like, how could I be doing it wrong? I say the perfect thing. I'm like, because you're not taking control of everything I teach. You got to put them on your list. So the only way to do it is say, I don't carry cards. You could still give them a card. That's okay. But be slow and say, oh, really? So where do you live? Oh, you're in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Very cool. Well, hey, do you have a card? Well, they'll say yes or no. If they say yes and you get their card, then I start taking notes on the back of the card. I ask them questions. Well, how many people? What are you thinking? Okay, well, I'll follow up with you. If they don't have a card, I say, okay, and I get my phone out. I go straight to notes and I say, okay, type in your name and your email because I want to send you some things. So for me, I'll say, hey, I'll send you my 52 lessons or the Success Habits book. 100% of the time people do that. Now, how about if someone says, no, I don't want to do that. I want to give you my name and email. You say, that's fine too, because, are they going to, they're not a candidate anyway. And I said, now, Keith, you follow up with them. You put them on your list, but because they said they want you to speak, you follow up with them. You don't put the ball in their court to follow up with you. You follow up with them. Now, you don't, again, I don't chase them, but as far as they would like to hire you, you get the info, add them to your list, then follow up with them. Great to meet you, and then build it that way. Does that make sense? So everyone that comes up to me, and so I'll give you another one. Who's on Clubhouse? Okay. So this has been pretty cool. And it all is based on this principle. We're talking principles. And the principle is someone comes, someone on Clubhouse follows you, you follow them back. Then they private message you on Instagram. That was great. Hey, thank you so much. And I put a little space. I'm not just real quick. I'll say, hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. And then I'll see if they come back. If they don't come back, then a little bit later, if they do come back and tell me more of the story, hey, I'm a Jim Rohn fan, I will say, that's awesome. By the way, do you want this new book I just did with Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Mark Victor Hansen? If it's a lady, I'll say, do you want the Passionistas book I did as well as, and then I'll do the Success Habits. And if so, what's your email? Well, 95% of the time they give me their email. And then I add them to my AWeber list that has the autoresponder that then sends that welcome email. And it's the only email in there. I don't have a funnel. Now they're on my list to talk to. So the next time I do an email, like if you get out to my list Tuesday, I'll probably do an email talking about my next podcast coming up or whatever. So that's been powerful. And then Sean, if they don't do anything after, thank you, great meeting you, I might come back and say, hey, by the way, if you want. And again, I'm just saying I'll send them something of value. And a couple of people haven't, and that's fine too. So again, that is a principle for me. Everyone that reaches out to me, I'm going to ask them, do they want? And so you got to come up with something people might want. Now, here's the beauty. Do you think they want this book because of Kyle? No, they want it because I gave them hooks. I gave them, maybe it's the Les Brown hook. Maybe it's the Darren Hardy hook. Maybe it's the Todd Stoudemire. Maybe it is Mark Victor Hansen. I give hooks. So I put out hooks to find out what they might be interested in. And so when you're offering stuff, that's why I'm a big believer in the books. And this isn't a commercial about the books, but people say, why celebrity authorities? It's because people don't care about me. I find out what they care about. They care about Robert Alt, the founder of Ole Music, or Bob Berg, or Ray Higdon, whoever it is that, and again, I'm selective based on what information they've given me. If I'm at an event, someone comes up and says, and let's say I didn't speak, I'm just at an event. Hi, I'm John. So Kyle, they look at my name tag, what do you do? And I say, I'm trying very quickly get to what they do. It's like, yeah, I'm in the seminar business. What do you do? And then I find out from the data, do I talk about Zig? Do I talk about Jim Rohn? Do I talk about Darren Hardy? Do I talk sports? And from there, I have different tools I can give them. Okay, so I know it's getting late. I mentioned build a list, then you got to talk to the list. And the other thing I would say is your website. And so here's the final comment. And then we'll do any Q&A you guys might have. But on your website, let's see here. Okay, on your website, so Jeffrey Gitomer said one of the most brilliant things one day. He asked me a question. It's a great question. He said, Kyle, where do you live? I said, well, Jeffrey, and he was at my Philly inner circle. So we're up in Philly, and I said, well, you know where I live. I'm in the Dallas area. And he goes, oh, so you're going to give everyone your home address on social media? And I go, well, of course not. And he goes, where you live is your website. Where you live is your social media platforms. 24/7, you live on your website. 24/7, you live on social media. So make them great. And I think the most common thing when I'm talking to people is we don't feel good about our website. And I got to tell you, I never feel good about mine. No matter, every time I update it, there's something I want to improve. But just realize people can find you 24/7 on your website. They can find you 24/7 on Instagram, Facebook. That's why I like Instagram, is it kind of has a whole story, right? It's your story to the world. And so be intentional, put a little time and effort into it. I have 4 criteria for your website, but I could go on and on, Sean, on different things. So maybe that would be a question someone would have on it. But there's so much more, just touching base on some of these different things, but maybe we should do questions.
Yeah, well, so some people were asking about the wheel,
Okay.
and let's do some Q&A. But I also want to touch on the wheel because some folks were saying, so what's this online course that Kyle has that's everybody's talking about, and people are talking about it in the chat. So I'll let you fetter that out, because I know you've got some cool information on that. But if you've got some Q&A, do me a favor, raise your hand. I see some people raising their hand already. So Kyle, just let me know if you want to talk about the wheel a little bit.
Yeah, I'll do that real quick. So,
okay, and then we'll go to Q&A.
So here's the thing. I kid you not, I'm doing my 2-hour podcast with Darren Hardy. He said, when are you going to do the wheel? Kind of like a challenge. And I just get it nonstop. Robert Helms, Sean, and it's I think it was Rich Danby up in Toronto sent me a 5-paragraph email. I need to do the wheel. And so I've kind of prided myself that people can't really get to that stuff unless they're part of my inner circle or part of a book. And so it's like, I don't have a course. I don't do any of that. It's just it's there, and I've been fine not having what I call a commodity product. But I finally, the stars came together, and I don't think it would have, Sean, if I didn't have a podcast. That kind of, it's like, okay, I'm building this audience. Not my inner circle's kind of locked on how many people I can have in it. My books are locked on how many people I can have in it. They both, sell out. They're full, and so I said I'll do it. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And so it's 16 modules. It's really in depth. And I would say the thing I'm weak at is you don't build a million plus list for Philip Rooms if you're not a good tactical person. So I am a good tactical person, but as far as teaching about SEO or teaching about tech, I do my own Aweber, but I don't want to teach on it. That's not my strength. So I brought in Paul and Sharia, that's their full-time gig, and they added 80 videos on everything, everything from funnels, because that's their world, but Aweber, YouTube, this crazy stuff, right? And they were charging over $1,000 for that. So I threw that in. So it's my 16 modules. It's other bonuses on, one thing I'm really good at is how to test an offer, how to test, I put on big events, but I don't put on a big event and pay big things without testing the offer. I don't release something without testing. Everything I do is a test. And Sean's got to see that in real time with Inner Circle members who build the perfect thing and then go sell it and no one buys. So when Seth Mosley, a 3-time Grammy winner, 29 #1 songs, he's in the Inner Circle, he's been in my books. He was creating an online singers course. And he said, hey, before I do it, what do you think? I said, I got like 3 questions for you. Do you have an audience? Do you know people will buy it? Because your audience is a Gen Z. And, have you ever done this? And the answer was he didn't know on all 3 of those. And so we created a test, and that's now become a multi-6-figure business. So I have a whole module just on that as a bonus. And I thought, what am I going to price this at? I could do $1,000, but again, cold traffic they're not going to buy that, Sean. And I'm not that well known, and people don't really know my story. They think I worked for Jim Rohn. They don't really know the story, except the big guys who do. And so I thought I'll make it $400. And then, so when we talked about it, Sean, you said, hey, what can we do? And I said, because honestly, I'm just thrilled when people go watch it and listen to it and they send me notes. So those that want to buy it today, we're doing, if they enter the coupon Sean, they get 50% off. So it's going to be like $199. So here's how you do it. And I'm sorry for those that paid more that already have it, just the way it is. Those things happen, but we're doing KyleWilson.com, the wheel, WHEEL. Sean, you might type that in, KyleWilson.com/the wheel. And when I set this up, there's a payment option. It's pay it all $399 or pay 3 payments of $150. On the coupon, I know the $399 will give you 50% off. So when you go to the shopping cart, it'll say coupon, you just type in Sean. But on the payments, I think it'll only do it on the first payment. I don't have a way to have that the second or third. I guess I could manually change that. So if you want to do payments, I'll do it I can manually change that, I think, if someone did payments. I think it'll do it on the first payment, and then I would go in and manually change it on that. So KyleWilson.com, the wheel. And then I think, Sean, we talked about we want to reward the people here. So it's 50%, and we'll do that for another couple of hours. And then later today, I'll change it to 30% for people that hear the replay. Is that fair? But the 30, Sean, you're muted, but the 30%'s when you have to, it's in the shopping cart when you type in Sean in the key.
Right. Yep. No, I think that's awesome. And I didn't know you were doing 50. So y'all, this is, again, it's powerful. I bought it. This wasn't we all, even in the Inner Circle, we buy this. So,
you probably had 50 people from the Inner Circle sign up when it came out.
Yeah. I don't know if that's even a better price than I got it for, but that's okay.
Yeah, and by the way, when I released it, it's part of my launch. Here's part of the thing. It's irresistible offer to a warm market with a hard deadline, and that the price is going to go up. And that's how you test it. Because if you're a warm market with an irresistible offer and a deadline, don't buy it, you got the wrong offer. So I did give it to my inner circle at the best price at the time. And they bought it. It's like, okay, I've got the offer right. I got the website right. I got the lingo right. And once you know something, so here's another little tidbit for anyone that wants to do affiliate marketing. You don't dare go to an affiliate to sell your stuff until you've nailed it first yourself. So at least they're going to the marketplace with something that's been tested. And so, yeah, I launched this to my inner circle before I made it public.
And it's, again, folks, the modules keep coming up, but the bonuses, there's 40, 50 videos on how to build. There's a couple of key videos on how to build your Aweber, which is a no-fee account that you can start up to 500 people and build your list right now. You can start on that this afternoon. These things that Kyle's talking about, right? Having a great tactic without the principle doesn't work. So this is just extraordinarily powerful. I would encourage you to go get it. If you're on my morning calls, guess what else you get? You get me, who actually is going through it, that you could probably ask some questions about. So you get the value add of being part of the Daily Awakening by being part of something I'm already a part of, and you get to ask some questions about that, because this is about you taking 2021 to the next level. So there you go. There's a kylewilson.com/the wheel. 50% off here for the next couple of hours. Sean, SEAN. If you want to get the recording to the replay, get on my list, www.seangmurphy.com. Sign up for the 52 scars we all carry, and you'll be on my email list. So let's go to some Q&A.
Sean,
go ahead, Kyle.
I do want to touch base on Aweber real quick. You know, that's the cool thing. There is no back end stuff I'm selling. I'm not affiliate for all this stuff. So I can always say exactly what I think works best. A lot of people use MailChimp, and I have two distinctions. So Sean said something awesome there. Get started, whether it's MailChimp, Aweber, whatever, Constant Contact. But here's why I do Aweber, and I'm kind of an expert on email marketing and have done this and seen everyone else do it, good and bad. MailChimp, you cannot get on a phone call. You know, I've done this a long time. These programs are so robust. You would never run out of questions. In Aweber, you can get on a phone call with someone. That's good enough reason. And then there's another feature they have where you can exclude people. So I'm a big believer in have 10 lists. So on mine, I have like 50, but I have inner circle members. I have book people for each book. I have events I've done. I have 52 lessons, all these different lists. So if I'm going to promote the wheel to my list, do I want to send it to people that already have it? No. So I need to exclude that list. MailChimp doesn't have that. They have something where you can not include a list, but in Sean's case, he's on like 8 of my list. And if he's on one of them that I exclude, he won't get the email at all. If he's on 8 and I send an email, he's only going to get 1 email. Aweber, for the same, it's free, or, you know, it used to be $20 a month. Now they have a free version. And I'll be honest, I pay $300 a month because I have a pretty big list I've rebuilt that I've talked to. But I'm just a big believer in Aweber.
I love it. And again, and for those of you, and it might be a question that comes up, if you've got an old list, Kyle teaches you inside of this wheel how to scrub that list with some technology that's out there that doesn't really cost you anything, that allows you to bring over so you don't get blacklisted and all of that stuff. So for those of you that got a big list, that's another conversation. Kyle, how do they find you on Facebook is a quick question.
I don't know. I guess Kyle Wilson. I am so not Facebook these days. I have my personal page, and that I think I am at 5,000. But if you go friend me, send me a friend request. I see Sean on there. I see some weird stuff, so I do unfriend people when I see weird stuff, or I'll post something that triggers somebody and they'll unfriend me. And so that's when I look at who's sent requests. I do have a business page, Kyle Wilson Marketing, probably, but Sean, I quit talking to it because Facebook changed their algorithm so much that you can't even reach the people. So I'm more of an Instagram guy right now. And Instagram, I'm Kyle Wilson Jim Rohn. And I love Instagram. And again, the ability for someone to go to your page and see you're making your own movie. And like I said, when you send the email, I'm going to send you the books. And this one, when I did this with Erica, I really bought into her millennial mindset of you get to, instead of saying, hey, look at me, that's not what she's doing. It's business. It's like you now cut out the middleman. I used to be the middleman. I used to be the publisher and, the event guy. You had to go through me. You don't have to do that anymore. And that I have had to reinvent myself, right? And I just want to, Sean, I don't know how many people have their hands raised, but I got to say this one thing because it applies to all of us, I'm sure. And it was my biggest thing I wrestled with. And it's that we diminish our stories. We diminish putting ourselves out there. I diminished myself. Again, I didn't go out and really tell my story when I sold my companies. And so, when we put ourselves out there on Facebook, what I found for myself, I found it for Colonel Tim Cole, I found it for Tom Burns, I found it for Tim Humbert, the different people I work with, they were diminishing their story too. And being in a book helped them share their story, but social media really confronts that for us. And so here's my question for you. And I had to deal with this myself. How much influence do I want to have? That's the only question. And if you don't want to have any, don't put yourself out there. If you want to have influence though, yeah, you got to get out of your comfort zone and put yourself out there. And some people will judge you. Some people will say, boy, that Kyle, he's arrogant. He's bragging. Look at him posting a picture with Les Brown. That's okay, because someone else will see it and go, oh my God, that's what I want to do. I want a seat at the table. What do I have to do what you did, Kyle? Or or that quote you gave of Jim Rohn? I needed to hear that today. So two people judge it. Usually people I went to high school with, that there's people that don't want you to grow or change, and that's okay too. I'm not judging them. But it got down to this key question: how much influence do I want to have? And so when I think of social media, I sold my companies, I came back out. Social media is the fastest way to build your list. It really is. But you don't own it. So when we talk about building an email list, Seth Mosley, who was 27 at the time, he's 33 now, but he said, Kyle, the biggest thing that shocked me, he said, I bought into everything you said, but when you were saying build an email list, I'm thinking, no, Gen Z. He's like, even with my Gen Z audience, 80% of our sales have come through the emails. Not our podcasts, not social media. It's getting people onto the email and then sending targeted emails. So build your social media and occasionally put out something where they then get on your list. In my case, someone private messages me, say, hey, by the way, if you want, I'll send you XYZ. So and here's a clever little tip. Let's say you don't have the right tool, but you have the digital permission from Sean to send out his book. Like find something, find like in the resilience book, so powerful, by the way, find things that people might want. Even, it never hurts to ask someone, hey, I found someone that really would like the book, you're in, Sean, and I can promote the fact that Kyle, Jim Rohn's 18-year business partner, or Keith, who played in the NFL, Sean, my mentor from the morning calls. Would you like a copy of that? And then he'll let you send it out, I'm guessing, right? And so
absolutely. And funny you say that, because I was just going to say, I've been in two of the amazing books, and I just put the link up if you want my free chapter, yes. SeanGMurphy.com/books. But yeah, if you want to do something like that, we'll figure out something.
Yeah. I mean, the one you're holding up has 8-time Emmy winner, Newy Scruggs. It has Colonel Tim Cole. It has James, right? So it has Bob Berg, or Bob Helms. So there's some amazing people. Ron Jones is in there. Hey, Ron. Ron's my good friend. One of the first guys when I came back out that I started working with and coaching, and He's been a phenomenal friend and advocate.
Todd Falcone from the Network Marketer, the Networker. So yeah, some pretty cool folks.
Yes.
Let's go to questions. I'm excited to have this first guy come up. Rob Cardenas is this amazing soul who is in Herbalife and has sat across the table from Jim Rohn, has got books, notebooks 20 plus years old of Jim Rohn notebooks, and he'll pull them out in the morning calls and go, listen, back in 19 so-and-so and such and such. So there you go. So Kyle, let me introduce you to Rob Cardenas. Rob? Good morning.
Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome. Honestly, this book is absolutely fantastic. Love it. Great stuff. I appreciate it. Obviously, I found your videos, and I got your offer when you first put out the wheel. So I mean, it's unbelievable stuff. So I can't really stress this deal. This offer is amazing. It's some of the best material, and I've actually said that in the past COVID year here, I've gone into a shelf to self development because I've had some of this stuff on my shelf, and I just started pulling it up. And so these are nuggets that basically, I've had you write down. So one of your key points was like putting out, you got to do it. You just got to, be active. But really quick, while I have you, so how do I've worn many hats in my life. I love the fact that you actually said you don't build a vineyard in a day, because I actually am a sommelier, and it's one of my passions as well. But how do you? I've been in networking. I'm getting involved with a new company and excited about it. But how do you recognize your avatar? Sometimes, I mean, how do you really dig into that idea?
Yeah. So I know people will take you through exercises, and that's actually, I think, one of those bonuses. I'm more of kind of a simple guy. And so I don't really have a real technical way. I just sit there and, like I said, I go back and do an inventory of everyone that currently has worked out really well for me, or why people say yes to me. And so I look at that. And so I work my way back, and I start looking for common traits. Now, the number one avatar for me are Jim Rohn fans. I'll meet someone, they'll ask me in fact, this happens. People say, what do you do? I'll say, well, have you ever heard of Jim Rohn? They'll say, no. Okay. You ever heard of Mark Victor, Chicken Soup? Nope. Ever heard of Phil Collins, the Def Leppard? Nope. Okay. Well, I sell magazines. I'm retired. I don't do anything. But if they're a Jim Rohn fan, I go, oh, really? In what capacity? Or I'll figure out, well, I was a big Zig Ziglar fan, and I've kind of heard of Jim. It's like, oh yeah, Zig's a great friend. So for me, I find out, I look back and I say, what has really worked for me well? Now and then I can play it out. Darren Hardy's really big right now, and I'm the only guy he did a podcast with in 4 years. He's a good friend. And if people went to the kylewilson.com, the wheel, they'll see a 1-minute testimonial of him when I'm with him talking about that influence. That's really powerful if you're a Darren Hardy fan. So I try and figure out real quickly, when I'm talking to someone, if they fit into my avatar. But having said all that, there's a lot of people in my world. Erica would have been one, who's part of my LA group, that didn't know who Jim Rohn was. So I think there's two components. Number one is, who does buy from you? Who does tend to be that success story for you? And number two, who you want it to be? Like, who are you targeting? If I'm targeting, trying to sell a lot of this new product, that's a totally different avatar than if I'm targeting one-on-one coaching clients. And so you got to kind of get clear on what your offer is. So if I'm promoting coaching, for example, which I don't think I ever have, but if I was, I would have a totally different message than if I'm selling an online course. And here's the key with the online course. I have to know, is that going to do all the right things? For me, I came up with my own set of reasons of why I'm doing this particular course. So I think if you're targeting customers, that's maybe one avatar. If you're targeting I feel like I'm being long-winded here, but I'll give you another example. I work with a real estate investor who was going to do a online program content-wise, and ultimately they're a developer though, and they take on syndicators. And I'm like, really, all things being even, if you're only going to do one product, create one that will feed people eventually into being investors with you. So I have different avatars for different things, but all things being even, usually the filter for me is who could be that higher end client that, you know, could refer people. But I love having these books, right? And I'm thrilled to give them away because there's so many amazing stories in here. So there's different things, and sometimes you can't pre-select. The surprise is, again, Tammy came for a Phil Collins mastermind because she's a Def Leppard fan, and that's led to, you know, six-figure referrals. So,
and the key is that part of finding that avatar is to have that thing to give them, whether it's a PDF you created or a copy of a book or something, even if it's a book you've bought, right? Like, do you like Mark Victor Hansen? And you give away Mark's book, or you give away one of Kyle's books. You have something to be able to give them so that that relationship continues to move forward. That's how, listen, there's a bunch of stuff in my office that's been a gift from Kyle, that when I order some of my books, when I order these books, he adds other stuff to it. It's like, could you not love that person?
well, you know, I did that in the Jim Rohn days. You know, we included all of these with each order. And, you know, but hey, I one last point on what Rob was saying, and to tag on to what you were saying, Sean, is, again, one of my filters is I want to fish, not hunt. So you don't see me really out prospecting as much as putting stuff out. So I would be more of a person that would put it out on Instagram or put it on Facebook and trying to attract than I would be targeting people and creating the stories that are going to attract the people I'm looking for. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Jim Rohn than I am my own stories. Could I share more of my own stories? Yeah, but if they don't know me, that might not stand out to me. So I'll use Jim Rohn. And so here's, you know, people say, well, I can't do that. And I'm like, yes, you can. This is gold, what I'm about to share with you. You can put a meme of Jim Rohn. So Rob, if you saw someone that had a picture of Jim Rohn, not them and Jim Rohn, but just Jim Rohn, or a book of Jim's, and it had a quote, you might look at it, right? Because you're a Jim Rohn fan. And then they say, Jim Rohn changed my life. In fact, I have been able to build a five-figure monthly income because of the principles he taught me in this book. So now you're connecting the dots, you're telling your own social proof, and you're targeting your avatar. So that's the biggest thing. People say, Kyle, I don't have your story. You don't have to have my story. You can create your own story. You know, if you're an investor, you can put a picture of Rich Dad, Poor Dad and talk about how that book, you know, create the affinity with other Rich Dad, Poor Dad fans and students, and then weave down a little. In fact, I had this six-step process I did. I was doing the Brian Tracy 3-day event, and I did hire one of these experts on advertising, but then I can't help myself. You know, I had to go do my own thing, and I so outperformed them because, again, they're paying people to do it that aren't connecting the dots. But the thing that worked the best for me for Facebook was to write a blog, content-based, so Facebook loves it. So now it's scoring at the highest of relevancy. Have a meme of my target, in this case, Brian Tracy, with a great quote that people would want to share. So I would have tons of people share it, like it, comment on it, connect. So I have a benefit for the title, 10 phenomenal lessons I learned from Brian Tracy. So there's the benefit. Then not far down, I create my own social proof. You know, Brian's longtime friend, but you don't have to say that if he's not. You can say, hey, listen, Brian, reading Brian's book helped me build a XYZ business, or whatever your social proof is. Then I gave more content. Then I had an opt-in. I'd say, by the way, I tell one of Brian's stories in my 52 lessons, and then I keep going. And then at the end, hey, if you want tickets for this 3-day event, I checked 6 different boxes. And if you do a business page on Facebook, how many have business pages on Facebook? Here's something really cool that I didn't know. I had to discover by accident. Everyone that likes your post, you can then invite to like your page. So I would never pay to get likes. I would pay to boost a post that does everything I just said, those 6 boxes, and then invite the people. So I was literally having thousands of people like that before they even knew anything about me. And I was paying for the boost, but then I could invite them to go like my page.
And Kyle, one of the things I want people to share is the next time that you're speaking, and if you've taken your view from gallery view to speaker view, take a picture of you, take a selfie of you and Kyle, and that's a meme you get to put up. I just spent 2 hours with Jim Rohn's former business partner and president of his company and learned some insider secrets. Imagine people who would want to hear the inside stories to the Kyle Wilson and Jim Rohn, because the chances are they probably, listen, I love Kyle, but they probably haven't heard of Kyle Wilson.
Right.
But they've heard of Jim Rohn. So take a picture of you and say, listen, this is the marketing genius behind it. I learned 6 tips from Kyle Wilson today that'll change my business. If you want them, reach out to me. And you get to use a picture. And the time you've invested here, right? Ray Higdon talks about ILT, invest, learn, teach. This is brilliant messaging that you get to go find your avatars, because if they like Jim Rohn, you got to have the guy who kind of made the sausage behind Jim Rohn with all of the marketing. So let's go to another question. I get to bring up another very dear friend. He's on the morning calls all the time. He gets up at dark 30. He's out in the middle of, I don't know, Siberia. It gets so cold. His name is Dana Scranton. He's a brilliant, incredible mind, thermodynamic PhD, master of word and wordsmithing. Incredible soul. And if you ever have a down day, Dana can send you a paragraph that will light you up for probably the next year after you figure out what all the words are in it. So Dana, great to have you here. Dana, meet Kyle.
Oh, thank you, Kyle. Pleased to meet you in person. I've got several of your courses, and I've got Jim Rohn's stuff from way back, and it came from you, and I didn't even know that.
Well, thank you. You know, I hear that all the time. Someone will say, and I got this Brian Tracy, and I got this Dennis Waitley. I'm like, well, thank you. I didn't like, I'll find that out. In 2005, I bought Dennis's program. I'm like, well, thank you for being a customer all these years.
Well, you're welcome. Well, I have a question, of course, but before that, I just wanted to share a little something with you as you wound through all of the various high content, high value that you've heaped on us today. As you closed out here, one of the things you said just kind of lit me up a little bit. I have a definition of what an entrepreneur is, and it's a simple definition, and something you said weaves right into it. That definition is an entrepreneur is somebody who identifies the needs of people and then with courage, conviction, and resourcefulness connects them with a means of fulfilling their needs. The key word in that definition is one word, one syllable, one letter, A. And what you said here in sharing the meme, for example, you don't have to create the product. You don't have to be the one who originated it. You can connect somebody like yourself or Sean or virtually anybody who has the value that that person can use to grow. And you are the conduit of value from the source to the user. Yes. So I just wanted to share that with you, and then I'll get to my question.
I love that. I call that being the utility. You know, you're the utility to connect. It happens. Sean's a great connector, right? So he will hear something here, connect, you know, the two, and that's when we're the utility, and people appreciate that. At some point in time, if you keep bringing value and you're the utility, good things will happen.
Okay, well, let me give you the question here, and you've actually answered this question in some respects, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How would you accelerate the process of success? Now, that's a broad question, but let me give you the background. You know, we're in a time right now where people are hurting. There's a lot of things happening in life, and many people don't have the time and the patience to let something play out for a course of years. So if you were to take your wheel, how would you accelerate that wheel so that people could get the result they're seeking or the success they require in order to have the patience to then move on?
That's a great question. And by the way, I like your camera. Good job. You got a good, that's a good lesson for all of us, right? Really have that. The true answer for me, Dana, is back to getting very strategic. Most people are building on the wrong plan. They're doing, so Brian Tracy told me this in 1991. We were doing events all over the country, and I was at his house, and he said, Kyle, you're a young guy, you know, you don't have kids yet. He said, most people it's like an airplane. They go down the runway at 40 miles an hour, burning up enormous amounts of fuel, but they never get the plane off the ground. And he said, if you can get the plane off the ground, you go 300 miles an hour, actually using less fuel. And I see a lot of people strategically, they haven't done the work to figure out all the things we talked about today. Who is their avatar? What is their secret sauce? What are the spokes on the wheel that serve them? What are the ones that don't? What are they missing? The best ideas for me that exploded, to answer your question, that accelerated my growth were never tactical in the genesis. Now the tactics got them there, but they were the big idea. How do I get 2,000 people in the room and solving that? How do I take Jim Rohn to a bigger audience? No one really knows him. And that quote book came, it was a download. That has continued to be a pattern for me. The one idea that can change everything. And that takes, first of all, we can't manufacture it. You know, it took me a couple of months. It's just like if you're a songwriter, you can't have that song come to you. They just come. Now you have to show up, right? When you show up, that connection, that relationship, that idea. So that's my honest answer. I mean, yeah, I could give you a lot of tactical stuff, and I won't, because everyone's different. For one person, it'd be start a podcast. For another, it'd be do events. You know, I would have to ask you 10 questions to really truthfully answer that question for you. But from the biggest thing is take everything we talked about, watch this 10 times, and really get down to this key thing that most people miss, and it's getting really strategic. When I look at Darren Hardy, who reached 1.5 billion people last year, it began with him asking questions people are too lazy to do, because people are looking for they're looking for the quick answer, right? And to go back, it's really a personal question and a personal search. And then, you know, Sean was holding up a book called The One Thing That Changed Everything. No, called Life Defining Moments. And that'll be in the books I include if people send the email. But there's a guy in there, Paul Hirschman, who lost everything. And he was a good friend. And I'd sold my companies. I loaned him $61,000. And he ended up losing that. He almost died. He had a Job experience, a true Job experience. 5 years later, he built a company and sold it for 82 million. And he called me one day to give me a check, and he gave me the 61,000 plus he gave me another one for 200,000, which was awesome. And he's like, even though that, you know, he's like, that had nothing to do with this. I wanted to honor that. But he said, Kyle, nothing changed other than the everything came together. It's like I got the right partner. We got the right product. I couldn't force it to happen. And I see a lot of people trying to force things instead of taking a step back and really getting clarity and being patient. I have a thing where I have playbooks, and I wait for the right people before I do them. I don't go try and force it. I wait for the right person to show up. And when they show up, you know, meeting Jim Rohn, right? You can't make that happen. I've had that good fortune, but I think we all have those opportunities for amazing things to show up and happen. And then when you have the right opportunity at the right time with the right idea, it all becomes easy.
All right, well, thank you. You dropped a lot of nuggets in there. There's a lot more value in a few of those words than we've got time to talk about. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, hey, it's such an honor to meet you. I'm definitely want to know more about your story. If you get a chance, send me an email and give me the lowdown.
I will do
love-
so.
I really would love to know more about you, Paul. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome, Dana. Thank you so much. Brandon, where are you? I know your hand was up, then you got kicked out, and I don't want you.
I'm sorry, I meant Dana, not Paul.
Where's Brandon Lynette? She's on here. So she had a question. If she pops back up here in a second.
Can you hear
Yes, I can.
me? My service, I'm leaving, so.
No, you're good. Go ahead. And maybe not. Okay, who else has a question for Kyle? And again, marketing based upon what we talked about, because I know I've I've got lots of questions, but I know we're at 2 hours. We're 2 hours plus. Can you believe this? This doesn't happen always, but this is what happens when Kyle gets into the zone and he feels the audience and he hears all of you, and we still got over 70 people who are here after 2 hours. This is pretty golden.
And Sean, you and I can do a couple of questions if we don't have any. And what I really love are straight on questions. Like, here's where I'm at, right? What's your real situation? And let's do it. We do help seats all the time at our inner circle where, it takes a little bit of a diving in, but typically, it applies to everyone. The principles apply to everyone.
Let's go to the UK. We actually had some friends on here from Africa. Joyce Winaroo, who's a dear friend of mine, she was on. I saw her for those of you that are posting on Facebook, I'm going to be drawing some prizes to have you there. And so Brandon is sending me a note in Facebook Messenger. Yeah, so let me know if you jump back on, Brandon. Let's go to the UK. Anne Pio, who's a very amazingly dear friend of mine. She's been a part of the Daily Awakening now, coming up on, we're maybe 11 months, 12 months. So, Anne, good morning, good afternoon in the UK. What's your question for Kyle? Kyle, this is a powerful, strong woman who has had some amazing breakthroughs over the course of the last 11 months, 12 months, and not because of being a part of the call, but because of her sharing herself with the call and her growing and changing, making some decisions. She's an incredible teacher. She's one of those ones that, that when we do the test, write down the 100 things that you've done well in your life, that you've taught me. She took it to the nth level and took it to 1,000. That's just the overachiever she is. So, Anne, I get to introduce you to Kyle. Kyle, Anne.
Hello, Kyle. Thank you, Sean. I'm kind of nervous asking this question, but I want to ask it anyways because it's been on my mind for a week now. So everything that you talked about today, Kyle, I've been pondering for a week now about how to rebrand myself on social media and things. And how you spoke about the wheel and the different spokes. So for example, say for someone who is just starting out and she's in a network marketing business and she doesn't really have other kind of the different spokes.
Go ahead.
Okay. What else could I do to kind of build up my different spokes, if that makes sense? So not just Instagram, but I don't know, what kind of products I can create. Because I'm just a teacher at the moment.
No, I love that. And by the way, I love the British accent. So cool. Thanks for joining in today. I think, one principle that has guided me all the time is I create one thing at a time. So I'm pretty good at going A to B. And then once you've gone to A, B, you can see what's next. If I had not gotten in the seminar business, I couldn't have, promoted Jim. If I didn't get the ability to fill up huge rooms, I couldn't have attracted Brian Tracy and Jim Rohn. So, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have become Jim's agent and I wouldn't have created a product. So I think figure out the one thing that's most important. Here's a great quote from Lisa Haisha. Become great at one thing and it will open the doors to everything else. So you're a teacher. Maybe that should be your avatar, other teachers. The two things I really love about network marketing are, number one, long-term residual income, right? And number two is personal development. Typically you get around really great people, and the personal development helps you grow. And so that's how I would have always led with network marketing, is who wants to create, like, so people don't want to hear, I've got an opportunity for you, but they do want to hear, how can I create long-term residual income? How can I grow better as a person, get more skills, become a better father, become a better, spouse, become a better friend, have goals, be inspired? Those things I think everyone would say yes to. Right. And oftentimes that's just part of it. So I would find the message that resonates with teachers, potentially. You don't have to limit it to that. It's up to you to decide, and just go down that path. And then from there, it's like going down the highway. You can't see around the corner till you get there. And so for me, it's always, that is a strength of mine, is I don't really live in the future. I'm pretty present to what do I have to do today, and then doing a really good job of it. And then once that happens, you're around the corner and boom, cool things start to show up. So don't be too concerned about spokes having to be physical products, as much as it's just a strategy to be able to give the opportunity and to invite people to these calls, right? To invite people to Sean's call, to invite people, I don't know what your network marketing company, the different things they have, but being able to invite people to that. But there's a great story by Larry Thompson called Blue Ink. And I don't have time to go into the whole story, but the principle of it is that, he was so committed. He had met Jim Rohn, met Mark Hughes, and this is a 30-minute story. He tells it, the $1 billion mastermind we did at my house. So I'm going to do it in 1 minute. He was committed. So he had his 10 pennies in his pocket. He would move a penny every day. He did 30 meetings in a row, had 0 people sign up. Now, a lot of people said, I'm interested. This sounds good. But, he was massively discouraged, but he was committed. Then one day the company sends him some new promotional material, and it had blue ink. Now, keep in mind, this is the 60s. And he had never seen blue ink. Everything was in black and white. And he thought, wow, this company is on fire. They are cutting edge. And he got so excited, he started reaching back out to previous prospects and inviting them to the meetings. The next meeting, now because of the new emotion, the new excitement, the new belief, the same people that said no started saying yes. And I think the next 30 days, he recruited 100 people. So make sure, whatever you're putting out to your people is fresh. It's what's got you excited. And you can and so the best way to do it is to invite them to a meeting or invite them to something. And it could be something you put together. One thing I would do if I was in network marketing, I would create a little community of my own, separate from the big community, and start, as Sean has invested in you guys, start doing that in a small group of people. And I would tackle those two things, but you got to find out what works for you. But if it was me, it would be long-term residual income and personal development. And we're going to start huddling up once a week, our own little group. You're a safe space to build that relationship. And you could do that with teachers. And, if your current company doesn't provide that, you could create your own with a weekly call.
Wow, thank you so much. There's a lot to take away from that. Thank you.
People are gonna have to watch the replay, Sean, right?
Yeah, boom. Let's go to a Cincinnati transplant who was previously in Vegas. Sharon is a very dear friend, 20 plus years in network marketing, worked on Wall Street for a while, did like 70 cities in 30 days. So you kind of know that travel schedule. Helped take the company to over $1 billion through sales and trading and a variety of things. So she's just this amazing soul who is 75 years young, just celebrated her birthday, and is kind of rebranding, rebuilding, and was in tears with a couple of the things that you shared already on this morning's call. So let's go to Sharon. Hey, Sharon.
Hey, I just, given this opportunity and like people weren't raising their hand, I said, I got to raise my hand here. And I really want to thank you, Kyle, for everything that you shared. And it had me in tears was the fact that you reinvented yourself, because I've done a lot of reinvention. I mean, I was a teacher, went to Wall Street, helped grow that company to 17 billion before I nearly died doing it. And what I really needed to be doing was counseling with kids. So I did that. And I got into network marketing 20 years ago, and it's kind of been my Mount Everest. I'm, to me, it was like, of course I'll make six figures. So my second company, I made six figures, like duh. But I have been limping along since 2010. And I feel so grateful to be associated with Sean and with you and with all the people that are here now and stepping further in. And one of the things that I picked up today was about, the last few days, I've realized to compress, it's like I bump up against a wall and I noodle it for days. And instead, I'm just going to go break through the wall faster, so that's going to make a difference. But I'm dying to hear your story about how you went from 20 gigs to 110 bookings. How did you have the strategy? How did you think up the strategy to do what you do? It's like, because I hear you say you need a strategy. But, I have to admit, I've been lazy. That's why I hit, these last 10 years have been challenging. It's like, just give me the system and I'll follow it. It doesn't work that way. So I wanted to just pick your brains a little bit more about getting your strategy in place. Because my strategy right now, at 75 years old, I can't, this technology stuff, it's like I spent hours doing stuff. And I finally said, okay, let's do it. But even so, I just want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So, did my camera go off?
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah. Okay. And that's really weird.
I just sent you a really long email too, by the way. You don't have to read the whole thing.
Sean, that's weird, right?
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. We can see and hear you.
Okay. And my mic fell down, so hope you can hear me okay. So
Yep.
I switched. Okay, Sharon, I can answer the second question, or I can tell the 20 to 110. Let me answer the second one first. I don't know if other people have their hands raised. If not, I'll answer them both. I think in your situation, and by the way, congratulations, you look amazing. I had the unbelievable good fortune of Les Brown calling me 2 nights ago on his 75th birthday. And my birthday was the day before. And when he was on the podcast several months back, I told him about a couple of things I had of Bill Bailey's and Jim Rohn's. He's like, Kyle, whoa, stop. Send that to me for my birthday, February 17th, that I turned 75. I'm like, well, Les, I turned 60 the day before, February 16th. So that was kind of a special moment. But so you look amazing. Congrats. I think, yes, there's too much stuff. We got to make it simple. So take everything out there, forget it that you're being told to do, and pick one thing. I was wide. You don't want to be wide, you want to be deep. Find the one thing that's going to work. And so for me, what really changed everything when I came back out was starting a mastermind. And when if you're compounding, if you can bring value, and I'll tell you, it was never a business model for me. If it was a business model, I would have been doing them all over the country. I did not. I did them in Dallas with the people. I did it for me. I said 12 people, and I did one in LA, 12 people, and I was doing it for me, but that investment really made a difference. So I'm not saying you should start a mastermind. I'm saying I picked one thing. There were 10 things I was doing that weren't really working that well. I was interviewing all these big names, Darren, all of them, and creating lists and funnels. That didn't work. Not really funnels, but just it was just too wide. But once I picked the one thing that could actually compound and grow, and then from that, so okay, now I said, okay, I'm going to do a mastermind and I'm going to test it. I had a little test. How am I going to do that? Well, I had to do a couple of one-day events. So I did a one-day event with Larry Thompson. I did a one-day event with Chris Widener, did a one-day event with Ron White. And from that, then I was ready to launch a little mastermind that now has grown really amazingly, and it's grown mostly through referral. People can't just go sign up for it. It's an application that's got to be a good fit. And so it's one of those things where I've attracted it, but it took time. And then that kind of became the thing to how do I serve those people better that led to some other things I do with books and such. So make it simple, find the one thing that really resonates with you. I would say most of the stuff out there we're told to do is because someone's trying to sell a product. Oh, you need to do this. You need to do that. You got to do this. You got to have this. They're selling something, whether it's ClickFunnels, all of it, right? Most of it will actually hurt you. I never have a problem with the money people pay. I have a problem for the wrong road they go down of buying the wrong plan. So in your situation, stop most of it and figure out the one thing you really need to do that you can do. If it's not part of your skill set, don't do it. Seth Mosley, he's a music producer. So I says, you start a podcast. You're already set up. You have amazing, that fit him. There's other people that say, Kyle, I don't know Facebook. I don't know Instagram. I don't know any of that. I don't like it. Well, please don't go all in on it then, Don't go hire an agency to do something because, social media is about being social. So I don't think I'm not a believer in sub that stuff out. But the reason so many people talk about it is because they're selling that service. So I would just, get down to the one or two things you really want to do that will work right for you. And that will help on the clarity. And here's the last thing I'll say on that, Sharon. There are things that I've done in the past that worked for me, but I don't have the right people for it. So when the right person shows up for certain things, it's like, okay, I'll go down that path. And that's kind of what happened for me too, is I started attracting the right people through certain things. If I didn't have the best editor and publisher and the person I could really work with and we collaborate, I wouldn't be doing books. It's easy enough to say that wouldn't be a good fit for me. So just I think once we get clear on a couple of things, the right people show up, the right person to help you on the technology shows up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. She might be frozen. We're going to go to a little bit
Thank
warmer
you. You cut in and
area.
out a little bit.
Oh, go ahead, Sharon.
No, I just said thank you. You cut in and out a little bit, but because of my internet. But that's all right. I'll keep on hearing. So awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sean, was I cutting out on your end?
No, you were good over here. Sometimes it's
about my speaker. Okay, cool.
Let's go to a little bit warmer territory, Florida. Gigi Francois is this amazing young soul, powerful, strong young woman who's building in network marketing. She's done some amazing things as far as stepping out into her niche. So it's just a pleasure to, I call her my little sister. So I get to introduce you to Gina. We call her Gigi. So Gigi, Kyle.
Hey there.
Unmute.
Hi, good morning. Hi, Kyle. Nice to meet you. First off,
Nice
thank you for all of this value that you've provided to us in a very short period of time. I'm very grateful. I'm a little nervous right now, I'm going to admit. People that know me know I'm probably sweating right now, so I'm a little bit nervous. Because you said something, I have two questions. And you said something and it really hit deep when you talked about diminishing your story.
Yeah.
So my question is, what would you say to someone who feels like they constantly diminish their story?
Yeah, that was a big one because I literally did that. People that know me, like I did these big, huge events. I mean, literally all of it. Idea, sold it, put it together, hired all the speakers, sold all the tickets, filmed it, and I never even got on stage. Now that was strategic for me because back then, if you're a promoter, all the speakers want to meet you. And I was so locked in. I already had something working. I was saying no all the time. So I was pretty anonymous just for my own self-protection. But when I sold the companies, I really was okay just to keep all that quiet. And the people I did not want to offend were the people I went to high school with, thinking I thought I was all that because I'd retired in my 40s. And so when I came back out, that was the hardest thing for me to do. And when I look back at some of my old posts, it's crazy. I mean, I would do a Jim Rohn quote and not even mention, you know, he was my 18-year, you know, partner. So I've seen it so much. Tom Burns, who's been on with Sean, you know, Tom wouldn't even talk about, you know, Robert Kiyosaki, and Robert wrote the foreword for his book, or wouldn't talk about, you know, his incredible business success over and over and over. So part of that process is just to really be clear on your reasons. You know, I said, you know, how much influence do you want to have? And so part of it is, what are your reasons to be successful? And in the beginning, it might be to pay your bills. It might be to, you know, buy your parents a house. It might be to, you know, have a new car. And then after we get financial reasons out of the way, then it starts becoming bigger reasons. Now, if you have a family, that's always going to be at the top of the list. So your family, but then there's the next step. And it just keeps growing, right? Now it's making a difference, philanthropic, helping other people. Jim said the ultimate reason to become successful is what you'll become in the process. You know, what will you have to do to become that? And then I even add having a seat at the table. Like, who do I want to spend time with? You know, having Les call me, or being able to call someone and they pick up the phone. I want to authentically be able to call them knowing I can provide them value. So part of what drives me is to build an audience to be valuable to valuable people. And I left that out. That was the driving principle for me, is how can I be valuable to other people? And Jim Rohn said, if you want to be successful, how do you bring value to the marketplace? So you have to have this full, you know, bag of tools and reasons to say, yeah, I'll do a Facebook post, or I'll put myself out there, or I'll ask a question and be nervous. Or in my case, I'll get up and speak in front of a bunch of car dealership people that have such, just, you know, they can't, you know, it's not a friendly audience, but my reasons were bigger, that I was okay. And I also, this is huge, I was also armed with the knowledge that if they did say yes and bought a ticket to the seminar I was selling, it could change their life. So if you believe in the opportunity, if you believe in the product, and you have enough reasons, you will, you know, you'll say, I will own my story, because if I don't own my story, I can't have influence. So I'm over the top. I mean, people all the time think Kyle is the biggest braggart in the world, but I know they don't care necessarily about my story. They care about Jim Rohn, or they care about Darren Hardy. And if I don't tell that part of the story, I might not get their attention. So sometimes you got to say, hey, I'm in the top XYZ of the company, or this month I hit, or I got to be with Sean on his call. Sometimes you just got to say those stories to get their attention.
Thank you. Okay, and then one other question. This
Sure.
one's a little personal, because you said you like to be like, okay, this is where I'm at. Okay, so this is where I'm at.
Okay.
In network marketing, and I've been with my company for about a year now, and I really haven't, I guess, put myself out there because I constantly diminish my story. So what would you say to someone who is, I guess, in my position to where they want to have that influence, but they still, like, I guess, doubt themselves?
Hey, now, have you had some success, you said?
As far as business, like building, no. I've gotten like results from the product.
Okay, and so the question is, you want to have more success in the company, or clarify just a little bit more? And
like more of success. Oh, sorry. More of success in like actually building that residual aspect of the business.
yeah, I think it's like we said, you got to have your reasons. You know, what are your reasons? So, you know, Jim gave 5, Jim Rohn. And I got to tell you, the first reason drove me. I didn't have kids yet. And the first were material things. I was tired of being broke. I wanted to have money. I'd never gone to college. And I had a brother-in-law that's like, he would ask those questions that, again, undermined it where I'm going. And I'd had a girlfriend that had, questioned my abilities. And so in the beginning, it might not be that noble, but you got to leverage whatever you can. So I had to leverage, people that doubted me. I had to leverage my mom telling me I had to go to college. I had to leverage failures I'd had. I had to leverage my own times where I didn't put myself out there. But also I wanted a nice car. I wanted to take vacations. I wanted to have lifestyle. And then once I had a family reasons really took over. And then as I built a bigger business, I had profit sharing in my company, and I wanted them. I had 3 15-hour team members that were making 6 figures because our profit sharing was so powerful. That leveraged me. Now what leverages me is to be valuable to the people. So here's what's really cool for me, and I know it's cool for Sean, is if I build a powerful enough platform, I can invite people in my world and they can now invest in other people's world. And so, for Sean to have Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Hansen come on, and you guys get to ask them questions, how cool is that? But he can't ask them to come on if he doesn't have an audience for them. So those become reasons, right? So the reasons constantly shift and change for us to get up early, stay up late, but they're the most powerful part of it. You just got to really have those reasons. And then, I think Darren Hardy had told me, he said he had learned this as an early salesman. Someone had said, to whatever degree you could fail, you could have success. To whatever degree you could be unhappy, you could be happy. And so if you only fail this much, you can really the pendulum can only go this far on the success side. If you can put yourself out here, then it can go all the way out here. And he made a point every day to do something embarrassing, to fail, to have someone dislike him, to offend someone, as far as his aggressiveness to go out and get listings in real estate at the time. And he said that changed his life. And so I think similar, the more, and again, Sean will tell you, I don't like speaking in public. I did 3 years of masterminds where I never got out of a chair. I barely get out of a chair now. I didn't like standing up and speaking in front of a group. So I eased my way into it. And, miracles happen, right? When you put yourself out there.
Thank you so much.
My
I
pleasure.
got your course. You got me on your wheel,
Awesome.
and we're about to build my wheel. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. I'm excited for you. And by the way, thanks for showing up today. That's one of the biggest lessons. You got to show up. Jeffrey, who's on this call, talks about showing up for a call where Don Hobbs is on there, and Don is part of EXP Real Estate, and they just bought Success Magazine. And if you don't show up, sometimes you don't hear the very thing you need to hear, or meet the very person you need to meet, or whatever it may be. So congrats. Hey, Sean, I love all the smiles and energy from everyone that's asked a question. It's amazing. I don't think Sharon has quit smiling, and neither's Gigi. And so you just got great people on here.
It is. And we get to go to New York. I kind of don't want to introduce him because he's just this sexy dance machine. Baudilio is the name given to him by his mother. We all call him Leo. He's just this amazing soul whose development in his personal growth has been tremendous on his own. He's shared with us tremendous gifts on the Daily Awakening. He's this incredible New Yorker from Puerto Rico, Viva Puerto Rico, and just this amazing dance instructor who's done some stuff around the world and been asked to be on Zooms to do trainings around the globe of dance. So Leo, I get to introduce you to Kyle.
Awesome.
Oh man, how do I live up to that edification, Sean? You are a master at bringing a smile to people's faces, Sean, especially when it's welcomed with such great energy and reverence from Kyle and everyone on this call. Kyle, I think I'm gonna take from Gigi. I'm a little nervous. Actually, I didn't think I was. I was like, I'm gonna have a conversation. I'm gonna be good. But now that I'm speaking with you, I'm like, I am so nervous because this man literally rubbed elbows with Jim Rohn. Like literally rubbed elbows with the man himself who shaped my whole mature life. And so I just want to say thank you, not only for being with us today, but for investing all the pearls of wisdom that you have with us for 2+ hours now. I'm floored that you are able to take out from your day to be with us. It's just humbling. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kyle.
And I got to say, that's because Sean has put together an amazing group. And so it's easy. It hadn't felt like 2+ hours to me. It's giving me energy. So thank you guys.
You're welcome, Kyle. Well, this is how our daily awakening calls go all the time. So you're welcome to be on a call anytime.
Hey, thank you.
Well, I have 2 questions, and I'll just share with you a little bit about me that maybe Sean may have not said, but I am in network marketing. I've been dancing for over 25 years, and because of Sean, really because of Sean, he's helped me understand bridging the gap that I thought I had, or the void that I thought I had between dance and building my business, when they're all in the same. And one of the things that Sean has helped me understand is in conversation with people, there's a dance. There's a leading and a following. And one of the things that you shared today that really hit home for me, I wrote it down. It's to whatever degree you fail, you can also gain success. Which for me, and what the first thing that popped in my head was the law of polarity. And I forget that all the time because I've been in network marketing since I was 19 years old, so about over 12 years in multiple different companies. I've created a lot of success, and I haven't in some. And now I'm in an opportunity where I am excited, and I have the vision, and I'm sharing it. I have a team that's growing. I'm really excited about it. And yet, before all of this happened, I believed that I couldn't do it. And my question to you, Kyle, is when you were with Jim and seeing the greatness that in the person that he was and how he embodied it, did you ever doubt yourself? Did you ever feel that the things that Jim taught you or the things that you learned along the way, you may have not been able to share it or know how to put it together for other people to learn it? And if you ever had that fear?
Yeah, I mean, I still have that fear, and here's why. The world's changing fast, and you can be at the top, you can be at the bottom, you can be in the middle, and things are going to change. So if you're at the bottom and you're doing the right stuff, it's inevitable. You're at the top, Blockbuster, and a lot of other Nightingale Conant, for those like Sean and I that would know Sharon, that would know Nightingale Conant's story. If you're not pivoting, if there is, Jerry Rice, if you're a football player, talks about his strength was he always thought he was going to get beat out. Now, I'm not saying that's good. I mean, I would love to resonate at such a high level. I never got insecure or worried, but there is a healthiness to always questioning, am I bringing enough value? Jim and I, our 10-year handshake, before I finally put it on paper, so I could, there's a whole reason I finally put it on paper. It's in case I died and I wanted my team to be able to keep running Jim Rohn International and paying Jim royalties. But it was built on just bringing massive value, and Jim brought massive value. I brought massive value. And if your goal is to bring massive value, you're always going to feel a little insecure or feel like, how can I, get better and improve? And in the beginning, it was a huge test. I mean, we did this deal. I had an exclusive, and the wolves came in very quickly saying, Jim, what are you doing? Because I did triple his fee. So every promoter complained. And I know Sharon asked me how I did it. maybe we'll share it now or share it later. It might even be on the wheel. And Sharon, I know you're part of that, but it was constantly hustle and challenge. So always, that's always part of it. And you're still going to deal with it. I mean, we had 120, now we got 53, and this has gone on for a long time. If you're not careful, you would get insecure about that and say, oh, okay, this isn't, why are people, but you can't ever take anything personal. So it's part of Landmark or part of the four agreements. You get insecure, you worry, but then you get back to, you can't control what other people think. Sometimes things are going to go wrong. I had some things go wrong with Jim. And, here's a good analogy that has served me well, because Jim and I started at zero, right? So here's this little pizza, and it was great, but there was like 20% we weren't aligned. He's saying, Kyle, let's make money, but I don't want to be famous, like fortune over fame. And I'm like, Jim, I need you to show up for some radio. Like, he wouldn't even do radio shows. He turned down. I mean, I had my hand tied behind my back in many ways, because he was the opposite of every other speaker. He didn't want to create a lot of products. Almost all the products, I had to put him in a live event and record it. And but that was 20%, but 80% was great. Well, as the pie got bigger, that 20% got bigger, but it was still 20%. So we all have to realize it's not going to be perfect. We're going to get insecure. We're going to get misunderstood. We're going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. But as long as the value proposition is, 80% is great. We all know that if you focus on the negative, you're going to get more of the negative. But then I like it when people tell me they're insecure about things, because that tells me they want to bring value. It tells me they're questioning things. It tells me they have awareness of their audience. They have awareness of how they come across, So there always needs to be that little check mark to everything we do. Before you do a social post, have a question, but then let the bigger question be, can this have a positive impact on the people? And or occasionally you do have to put yourself out there and promote. Sean brings value, but occasionally he's like, hey, I got a new program and I'm going to put it out there, and I have earned the right to put it out there. And so, but still, no one wants to just, Sean, that probably makes you a little nervous, right? It's like, I'm going to go sell something, but he's earned the right to do it. But still, some people aren't going to get it, and you're going to question it. And I might not be answering your question directly, but hopefully.
Oh no, that was amazing. That I got from that there's healthy learning in, I guess there's a healthy learning in failure as you look to bring value. Is kind of what I got from that. Because sometimes we look to avoid failure, and that's, for me speaking personally, I look to avoid failure sometimes, where I get into analysis paralysis. And as of late, for the past few weeks, and it's interesting that you mentioned Darren Hardy, because I picked up The Compound Effect. I've had this book for many years, but I picked it up to read it again, and there's so many things I forgot. And Sean says this every single day: the art of Kaizen, which is the 1% that you put into what you do will make the difference. And oftentimes, like, we get into the thought of process of it, but not in the action of it, and we miss that 1% that we could have put into that action today.
Yes.
So Kyle, that was brilliant.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. That really helped. Thank you.
Hey, and you said something. You said Sean says every day. So congrats to you for showing up every day.
Thank you.
I
appreciate you.
Never know, right? What one day will be the key. And again, I'm quoting Jim Rohn, but it's so true. One day, and you put the odds in your favor when you show up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kyle. And I will be signing up for your wheel course. So I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you. We make it easy, right, Sean? It's like, I like the fish to jump in the boat. That's how lazy I am.
It's just
irresistible.
Fun, right? Have fun. Yeah. The next person, they've got their hand up. They've probably been on my morning calls. If not, they came through a great friend of mine. Nano is how his friends refer to him, Kevin Torres. Robert, what's your question, brother?
Well, hi there, Sean. Hi, Kyle. I just wanted to thank you both. Sean, thanks for the invitation. Kyle, thanks for being on and just sharing so much today. And myself, very much like you, I was always somebody that was not interested in being, on a camera, even like this or in front of a crowd. And just recently, I even just embraced Facebook. On Facebook, even if you go to my Facebook page, you won't really see pictures of me. I post other things. So I've been on Sean's morning calls and never had my camera on, but just in January, God put a vision in my heart to start what's called a global praise and worship event. And because of that, I've had to start being not afraid to be on cameras, not be afraid of, doing things because, that event means I'm hosting other people. And not only that, when God put that vision in my heart, it's to create a global praise and worship event where I'm having worship leaders from around the world come on and lead a global community all together, praising God together. And the interesting thing is, I don't know any worship leaders except for like two, and God put this vision on to have this event where there's going to be the vision is to have over 10,000 people on Zoom and worship leaders from every single country represented and attendees from every single country. So the fact that I'm not a musician, I'm not a worship leader, and he's put this on my heart, so I decided I'm going to run with it. I had 4 weeks in a row now, and God has been putting people in place to have on these events. So I don't have a list of worship leaders. I don't have a list of attendees to have come on I call it watch, but nobody watches praise and worship, you participate. So I coined a phrase, watchiping. And so this has been very, very exciting to be on. I thank Sean for the invitation. I thank you, Kyle, for being on. And because I do want to build a list. I do want to build a list with intention. And I do want to build a list with real relationships. And, so this has been really a godsend to, see Sean's invite email this morning and to be on with you and just to really start growing a list. And also I need help with, not being afraid to get out there because really, again, I'm always behind the scenes. I'm not somebody that, wants to be out in the front. And so this just all came in January and things have started rolling. Also, just recently, I became a member of Toastmasters to help with speaking as well. Because again, I'm not somebody who likes to speak or, be out there. And all of a sudden I became the president of Toastmasters.
Oh, wow.
So all this stuff is all happening at once. So I'm looking forward to, building my hub, building the wheel, and, looking forward to both Sean and yourself, working with me and helping me grow this thing because the vision is big. Like it's huge. And I'm starting from like ground zero, from a list of zero, and definitely need some help on that. So my question for you would be, this whole thing with the Global Praise and Worship it's basically a not-for-profit event. Would there be a difference in building that versus, something like where you're building where you are selling things? So that's my question.
Thank you. By the way, a guy named Michael Coleman was the founder of Integrity Music. And he was in one of our books. He's a friend. And Seth Mosley works, Seth has 29 #1 songs, 3 Grammys. He's a producer, songwriter, but how we really met was I made an offhanded comment that Switchfoot was my favorite band. And he said, oh, I just produced a song for John Foreman. But Seth has had a lot of country, but also worship songs, #1. So go follow him, go learn more about him. He has a podcast and he's had Michael W. Smith. He's had a lot of amazing people, but in particular, some worship leaders, great guy. Sean will tell you when he started this, if he had tried to monetize it, it wouldn't have worked. He had to build a community, and so great question. I think in the beginning, if you don't have a list, this is all about long-term, but you want to be intentional to build that list. And I don't know how you, and I know other people have their hands raised, so we won't go too much into, follow-up questions as far as me asking you questions, but I don't know how much you've done these type of events virtually. And if this is a first one, that's going to be a learning curve too. I know of some massive successes out there. I think of Eric Worre, I think of Brendan Bouchard, who said they started with 20 people, and then the next year they had 200, and the next year they had 800, next year they had 2,000. Now Eric had 50,000. But it's like building the vineyard. I'm sure there's stories out there. I just haven't experienced them personally or with other people that went from 0 to massive the first time. So it's a learning curve. Look at it that way. Overgive, be thinking long-term, which I know you're wired that way anyway. And just learn as much as you can about putting on a virtual event. I know when we had to pivot with COVID, I had a big 2-day live event with Ron White that we had to, pivot. And as much as I thought I knew, as much as people told me they knew, I still, we still had hiccups. So the next one I put on, I really got educated. So I would do practice runs. I would do 2 or 3 practice runs. There might be again, build the list is the most important thing. Now that doesn't mean an opportunity might not fall into your lap to potentially monetize it. But sponsors don't usually want to get around something unless they already know the numbers are there. So it's a little tricky in the beginning.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So I've done 4 weeks so far, and it's been growing. So looking forward to growing it up.
So it's not an upcoming event. It's
yeah, I've done, so the last 4 weeks, every Friday night, I've done one. So
I
the vision is.
I thought it was a big event you're promoting coming up. So you're
right.
You're doing it the right way then. Congrats. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. So the 10,000 is to come over time, every week, every Friday night, and we'll get to 10,000.
What you could do is you could do that, but then have a special one, that you're building up toward, in a couple of months. So again, it's the consistency, but then have something special. And then the something special is when you could test some sort of, offer potentially.
And Robert, I'll just throw this out as today's 730th episode. I've been able to add quite a few thousand people to my list by making them register for the webinar, for the Zoom, right? Just that little thing. And then you CVS that file over into whatever list building. Again, a webinar is a great one. You can put up to 500 people in there free right now. So take the CSV file from Zoom, and then you can upload it to that. They'll ask you where you got it from, and some of the stuff, there's some trainings inside the wheel that you can use to sift and sort that list. But yeah, you're doing it the right way. Congratulations.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, I'm doing everything. My URL, which is worshipourgod.com, goes to Eventbrite, so I'll definitely be able to do that.
Awesome. And thank you for making the world a better place, and for saying prayers for all of us. Appreciate you, Robert.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate you guys.
And Robert, honestly, again, I don't know your big vision on this or what your, and that's for you to get clear on. But the people I know in your space, and I do know quite a few, I would tend to think don't have smaller commodity type offers. Be thinking some high end where people get access to you to be mentored by you, and so that's, you're not going to make money selling $10, $20, $50 stuff. I think it's very competitive out there. So I think the better plan is to have a handful of people that you would mentor based on what you look at what you really have to offer the world, get really clear on that, and then start building that mentoring group of people.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Hey, you got a great camera too. Good job. I'm in the market for a new camera. So
yeah, the Logitech 3 something or other is kind of cool. But I'll send you that link.
Please, do. Yeah, that'd be great.
I get to introduce you to Eugenia Reyes, who's again like my little sister. She's some of the stories we've heard, and she may not be ready to share the story, but I'm gonna just kind of give you an insight. She was never far away as a child from being instantly taken care of in an ER room. And the reason I say that is because her and her mom lived in a car in the parking lot of a hospital. And she's turned herself around and she's told her story. And since she's told her story, she's gotten this bright light. And I love her to death. I love her entire family. Nosotros hablamos español with my bad Spanish. So I get to introduce you to my little sister, Eugenia Kyle.
Hello. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here and honestly spending this 2 plus hours with us. Thank you so much.
No, my honor. Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to ask 2 quick questions. So the first one that I wanted to talk about is advice on getting into the habit of learning something and applying it.
Yeah. So for me, I think there's two kinds of learning. You know, there's, if you're listening to a podcast or you're listening to a training that has broad knowledge, it's definitely going to expand your thinking. I think those, so yeah, that's a, when I made my comment earlier about, you know, just only focus on the stuff you're ready to apply, I get a lot of great ideas. If I listen to a podcast, I listen to different things. But also I think for me, when if I'm answering questions and I coach people, if we have like Brian Tracy on, I'll say, you know, really try and ask the question behind the question that gets them to think. And then that's when wisdom comes out. And the more it can be applicable to a specific thing you're trying to solve, there might be a beautiful answer. So think about the questions you're really wanting to solve. And then you got Sean here, you know, on a daily basis that, you know, can apply years of knowledge. And I always say, I don't just apply my knowledge, I apply all the other people I've watched. I watched someone, you would know their names, years ago, do a new business model that I know failed miserably. And then I watched everyone else copy their business model because they were doing it. And so I don't know just my fail. It's like people would say, Kyle, I got this brilliant idea. Oh my God, we should do a personal development radio show. And this has been going on for 20 years. I'm like, well, I happen to know Nightingale Cohen. I knew everyone that had done it and failed financially. And that's the reason there's not one, is because it didn't work the first 20 times. And a lot of people and this happened to me when I sold my companies, the guys that bought it didn't have historical perspective. So they were just doing all the things that, you know, didn't work. And they thought, well, you know, they just had no historical perspective. So I'm off on a tangent. My point is, the more you can apply it specifically and then find out people that have actually been there on every level. If you can gain their wisdom, again, Sean's experience, like what's your core business? Is it network marketing? So
Yeah.
Sean, beyond his own experience, has been a student in that industry for so many years. And again, so you have a master here that's not just talking from, you know, his own experience, but he's been a student of the industry.
Definitely. So as far as my next question, now, you know, I'm a network marketer. I'm 20 years old. I just turned 20 in December. So I started my business at 19. And at that point, I was in college, my first year in college. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I was going to be a doctor, but like this allows me to impact more people. Like Sean told me, Gina, do you realize that what you're doing is helping? By doing this, you're helping more people than you ever could have being a doctor. I said, oh my goodness. When Sean told me that, it changed my perspective, like on level like 100. So when it comes to marketing myself, I wanted to ask, should I focus on attraction marketing, like, you know, the videos, the ads, you know, to attract that target that I'm looking for to come into the business?
Yeah. I mean, who is it Is it an age group? Is it like, who is your audience right now?
So during this call, I actually thought about it. I'm like, let me go off of what happened to me. I was a college student, so let me target, the college students. So that based off of this call, that's what, like, I don't know, out of nowhere, it was like college students. So that.
Yeah, no, I think that works. And I think, again, when I met Erica, right, she was part of my LA Inner Circle. She was an actress, and she was doing, it was hunting. She had to go do auditions with 500 other people. And I saw her philosophy. I saw her hustle. I introduced her to Lisa Haisha. She did all this work to be part of a red carpet. And she knew it was for a philanthropic cause. So I saw the hustle philosophy. I said, listen, I think I have an idea of how to get people to come to you versus you having to go out and audition. I said, I promise if you do it, you'll attract. Here's the cool thing about attraction marketing. You attract the people that really want what you have. That's why being authentic is so important. I've seen people try and copy, I'm just going to say Tony Robbins. They try and be Tony, but they're not Tony. Then they're going to attract people that want Tony. And it's exhausting. Being anyone else other than yourself is very tiring. And it's not going to serve you well. So the more authentic we can be, and then put that out in the world and then attract people. So this literally did everything I thought it would for her and the women in the book about, having a tool that would attract people. So I think in your world, I know where I was going with that. Erica started talking about all the things millennials get blamed for, that they, they're putting themselves out there on social media, they're bragging, they're talking about successes they've never had. And she said, that probably happens some, but everyone she knew was very intentional. It's like, we're writing our own book on Instagram. We don't have to go through a middleman. We get to control our story. We get to go out and, really put ourselves out there. And then the other thing about millennials, and I have a son and daughter that are millennials, is, they have to believe in what they're doing. They have to have a cause. My editor for all my books, she's millennial, lives in LA. And it really forces me to always just make sure what we're doing is relevant, matters. So I think you can take what's important to you, freedom, financial independence, impacting people, the ability to reach a lot of people as an influencer through these incredible tools. And how can you do that? And you found your way of doing it. Hey, I was going to be a doctor. I was going to go to med school. And as much as I care about that, I also value traveling the world and having freedom and financial independence and impacting other people and using this incredible tools we have, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is, to, YouTube, to reach so many people, and then weave in your passion and your mission for the cause. Now, if you do that through videos, if you do it through, it doesn't matter the tactic. What's more important is the message and the passion and the belief and the authenticity, and then starting to build small. A lot of people don't take care of the few that they get. One of my favorite Napoleon Hill quotes is, don't pray for more, pray for more wisdom for what you already have. So as you start getting people, take great care of them and just realize that is going to be your story. They're going to be your example. They're going to be your testimonial. They're going to be the example, right, that you have.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
My
Have
pleasure.
an incredible day. God
Hey,
bless.
and send that email and I'll include this book too, right? When I send out the other books, it's really powerful.
Thank you so much. Seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Congrats too.
And yes, probably our last question, because we're at over 3 hours. Clientele, a young individual who's been on the calls, asked some great questions, participates, shows up every day, and just so glad to have him here. So what's your question for Kyle?
Oh man, Kyle, I have a good question. Like Sean said, first of all, thank you, Sean, for your being a resourceful and valuable individual in my life who's changed my life. And thank you, Kyle, for your time, since we're going on 3 hours. But I've never taken the leap of faith to invest in a course, but I'm really hooked on yours right now, because of everything I've heard, but also this wheel. And I kind of just want to tell you where I'm at in my life right now. And I'm sure once I go to the course, you'll break it down further for me. But when you told us to draw the wheel, I drew about, I don't know why, but I have about 5 lines on my wheel. And one of my lines consists of network marketing. The other one consists of modeling. The third one consists of graphic design. And then the fourth one is just overall social media, vlogging, getting in front of the camera, YouTube type of thing. And as I was looking through my notes before I answered it, or I asked you this question, I remember you saying, become great at one thing and it will open the door to everything else. And man, this is just taking a toll on me right now, because I feel like I can do all of those things or merge all of them at once. But what would you advise me to do when it comes to what part of my will I should start with, and how I can get my audience and my people there?
What a great question. I love that question. And so just shooting from the hip, and then I'll answer the question, but shooting from the hip for you, keep doing them all. Okay. So the principle of be great at one thing really gets down to people are trying to, again, sometimes we can be a mutual friend of mine and Sean's, Tony, right, is one of the most, he is one of the most personal development oriented people I know. He's incredible, but he's also a high-end coach. And just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should do it. And so for him, he was going to create these personal development products for $100 when he charged people $20,000 to coach. And I'm like, no, just be great at personal development and include that in your coaching. And that's what I've done all these years. I included all the stuff in my will for my coaching clients and for my inner circle. I didn't make it a product. Now I finally did it as a product. I have my own reasons. But that's kind of what that principle is. It's like Dr. Phil worked with Oprah, so he became big. And then he went off and did parenting books and health books, right? But he had to establish the one first. But specifically to you, I think of Rory Smoot, who's also been a guest on here. And Rory, I've known Rory since 2004, and I'm the one that licensed him to Jim Rohn, Les Brown, Brian Tracy stuff. And Roy in 2009 came to spend some time with me in Dallas, and he had a clothing line called Just Cool, and it was really cool. And then he had his smooth mixes, and then he had working with the Olympic team, and then he had coaching, and then he had branding, and he kept them separate. And I said, no, Roy, you are the hub. Don't make them so separate. Just Cool with Roy Smooth, Smooth Mix with Roy Smooth. You are the hub. And people that find you through Smooth Mix might also be interested in branding, or people that find you in the clothing line might also be interested. And same thing with Erica. I told her, so this is really kind of a good fit for you, because the people in the book are mostly fashion and entertainment. So Erica had never really done personal development, but Sean will tell you she was the MC at my Brian Tracy 3-day event here in Dallas. So using her red carpet fashion world got her into the personal development world. Now her whole brand is built around Passion to Paycheck, which came from the book. So she's still an actress. She's still doing fashion, but she's doing coaching through her Passion to Paycheck and personal development. She's on Instagram, and she does mix it up some. If you guys have ever heard of Tim Ferriss, his podcast, Tim says, I have like 10 segments of an audience. Now he's big though, right? So he's gotten big, and those are his interests. It's authentic to him. But sometimes, I'm similar, right? I've sold books, but I've done events. I was an agent. Marketer. strategist, all those different things. And so, you know, I show up differently sometimes, and my emails show up differently, and that's okay, because that's me. That's just what I'm doing. I'm not overly, I don't even really talk marketing much because it's so loud in that space. So I'm just being me. So I think the modeling will help you with the network marketing business. And just, yeah, you're the center of the hub.
I am. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson. I really appreciate that. This
No,
call was amazing. Thank you, guys.
Great for showing up. Good job.
Well, Kyle, there's the first half of the call over.
You know, Sean, when you promote the replay, don't tell people it's 3 hours or they'll never watch it. Say, hey, we had a quick 30 minutes. Go check it out.
No, it'll even be, I've seen you do this, broken up into different lead magnets, because there's gold in every moment. So one last question that Brandon couldn't ask, okay. But her question was, my question is, how do you go fishing for the marketing professional agent? Because I don't want to pretend I could say I could do it all. Now, she's somebody who has a very narrow niche. If you look at the title of that book, it's called Once Upon a Time, Bitches. And she's got a 3-part series that goes along with a workbook. And she's just done this thing. And so she says, how do I go find my Kyles? Right? And I think it goes back to kind of the bring value to valuable people. But so I guess her question is, how does she find somebody who's this amazing marketing person to become part of her world to help her in her world?
And what's her world again?
Her world is network marketing. She's network marketing, but she's really going kind of all in on becoming this author and trainer and coach for women who are part of her niche. And she's tattooed from neck to toes. So there's and she has a language that is a little bit stronger than mine, as you can tell from her title. But I love her to death. She's just this amazing soul, a mom of 7. 3 or 4 of those are hers, and some others came with the package. So she's I love her to death. But she will, I've had her, she's had me on her calls, and I've had her on mine. So
I have several similar avatars in the Passionistas book. Yes. So I hope she sends the email to get that. I'm just not 100% clear on, so it sounds like she is wanting to attract mostly women, but maybe men and women, into her network marketing world and be a thought leader, be someone that has influence. So yes. when she says, I want to get my Kyles, that's the part I'm a little confused on.
So meaning, so she has this organic reach. How does she find somebody that is an influencer? How does she serve an influencer to bring up an audience a little bit faster?
I think it's kind of the chicken or the egg. I don't ask for favors. I really don't. I look for people I can bring massive value to. I'm not even comfortable asking someone onto my platforms unless I can bring value to them. And just like I stuck around for 3 hours with you, Sean, and I loved it and happily, that's the experience I want when I invite people to my platforms, right? And the only way to do that is to have the goods. Now, there were times early on in my inner circle, before I built my list, I had people would come and I'm making it up to them in other ways. Here's an example. Maybe they're coming to serve my inner circle. I'm not paying them. They show up, but I'm helping them with their book, or I'm coaching them. So again, you're right, Sean, it's bring value to valuable people. The more you can stay away from asking for favors and lead with how you can bring value. And so I often, so the books, we have celebrity authorities in the books. I don't go straight for that. I say, hey, can you be on my podcast or be part of something? And it's just like, again, you're not going to meet someone and ask them to marry you, right? Hopefully not, because that doesn't work, by the way. You say, hey, how are you? Here's who I am. What do you have a conversation. Then you might ask them on a date. You don't go straight to marriage. And with influencers, it's the same way. And I've made that mistake too quickly, going to a value proposition. So all mine are almost people I've known for a long time. I don't know any of those short-term things that work really well. So it has to happen organically. It has to, it's going to happen. The more you bring value, the more those doors will open. Again, I'd just say, Sean, you're a great example of that, because you could have reached out to a lot of people, but if you didn't have the audience yet, it just ain't going to work. You built the audience, and that took some time, but you did it the right way. And so again, just think in terms of, I'm creating a vineyard. That's the best. I had a vineyard, so it's an easy example for me. Is you don't go plant a vineyard or great plants and have wine in a month. And so it just takes a little time. But hey, I'm very familiar with, I think, what she's wanting to do, because I had a lot of those in this book that had colorful language, and they knew exactly the avatar of who they're going for, and it's really been powerful for them. It just took a little bit of time, and it's kind of what we said earlier, and I'll wrap up on this. Get a small group. Don't try and start big. Start small, and if you have a small group, keep expanding from that, and then you'll start attracting the right people.
Well, there you go, folks. If you think this 3 hours was amazing, imagine, I don't know what the number is up to, 30 plus hours inside of the wheel of focused conversation and content. Kyle, thank you. I know we talked about 90 minutes, saying, well, so how long do your calls go? I said about 60 minutes, but I would hope you'd spend 90, and here he goes over delivering again. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Make sure you all go to kylewilson.com, get on Kyle's list, because there's just brilliance that comes out. And yeah, Kyle, any last words?
Well, I do want to mention, we're doing kylewilson.com, the wheel. If they put in Sean, they get 50% off if they're on the call, and we'll keep that open for a couple of hours. And then for the replay, if you put in Sean, you still get 30% off. And that's for, the next couple of weeks. And we both talked about it being irresistible. And we said, is that too aggressive, too giving away too much? And you want to honor your group, and that was the goal here with that. Other than that, and I just say that because of the time sensitivity on that. But other than that, it really just gets down to doing things that will compound over time, principle-based marketing, showing up. If you're searching, if you don't have the answers, keep showing up for Sean's calls. You never know what one idea where it's all going to click. And so you guys are doing amazing. You did show up. All the things I would say Jim said, do, be open to new ideas, be a student, not a follower, be a student, not a critic. All those things you guys are doing, or you wouldn't be here. And Sean, I loved all the great testimonials people gave you. So you built something amazing. I'm honored to call you a friend, and honored you would have me into your home today. So thank you so much.
I appreciate you, Kyle. And one of the things that we do around here is we always end a particular way. So, hey, folks, listen, from the marketing genius himself, the gentleman who was 18 years with Jim Rohn, who got to share his heart with us today. And listen, I think he over-delivered. I don't know about y'all. Drop a 1 in the chat if you think Kyle just absolutely over-delivered today. And I'm your head misfit, Sean Murphy, and I'll see y'all where?
At the next event.
The next event.
Love y'all. Hey, and here we go.
Love you, Sean. Thank you. See y'all at the next event.
And y'all tomorrow. Listen, tomorrow we're going to do a wrap-up. We're going to do a little Q&A conversation about all of the things we learned and the questions we didn't get answered. Life will never be the same, y'all. Thank you, Kyle. Love you tons, brother.
Love you, brother. Thank you all.
We'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye for now.